request Director Sir to kindly invite the keynote speakers to the stage. Now, I would like to request Professor Ganesh, Assistant Professor at Operations and Decision Science Department, to come and introduce our director and keynote speakers.
Thank you, Archita. Welcome to each and every one of you to ICETOA 2023 conference. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege to introduce our dignitaries that we have today, Professor Professor Subodha Kumar, and Professor Sriram Narayanan. So I have a long list of accomplishments that I should be reading out. So please bear with me. It's going to take some time and that's the signal of the quality that we have today. So, Professor is the director of TAPMI Management Institute, Manipal, since April 2013. He is also the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Management, Law, Humanities and Social Sciences Market. He also holds the position of TAPMI Chair Professor of Finance at TAPMI and Dr. TAPMI Endowment Chair in Management Research. Recently, Professor Veeraraghavan has been appointed as the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Mahe, Bangalore campus. This appointment is effective from April 1, 2023. Professor Veeraraghavan holds an MBA in Finance and Investments and a PhD in Finance. With over 20 years of experience in world-class business schools, he believes that business schools should work toward the outcomes that support the mission of the school. Professor Veeraraghavan's research interests are in the areas of corporate finance, behavioral finance, and the interplay between auditing and finance. He is a referee for several leading accounting and finance journals. Professor Veeraraghavan has published over 50 papers in international journals and has presented his work across the top conferences. His work has appeared in elite journals such as the Accounting Review, the Journal of Financial Economics, Contemporary Accounting Research, Journal of Financial and Quantitative Analysis, Journal of Corporate Finance, Journal of Empirical Finance, Journal of Banking and Finance, Journal of Management, Journal of Business Ethics, Auditing, Journal of Practice and Theory. He is also currently revising manuscripts for Management Science, Journal of Corporate Finance, Journal of Banking and Finance, and Journal of Empirical Finance. Professor Veeraraghavan has obtained research funding of over 500,000 Australian dollars from the Australian Research Council Discovery Grant Scheme and Australian Research Council Linkage Grant Scheme. Professor Veeraraghavan has won many awards for his work in both national and international conferences. Recently, he has been ranked 180 in the world in the Brigham University 2022 Accounting Research Rankings for his contributions to accounting research. He is also a recipient of the AICTE Best Teacher Award awarded by the Honorable Minister of Education, Government of India. SSRN has announced that Professor Veeraraghavan is ranked in the top 10% of the authors around the world. Professor Veeraraghavan is a trustee of Mitras Foundation, an NGO that provides free skill development courses to participants from rural backgrounds with the sole aim of empowering young lives. With that introduction, I welcome Professor Veeraraghavan to the conference. We are extremely lucky to have two eminent scholars as our keynote speakers today. Before I read out the introduction, I request Professor Veeraraghavan to welcome Professor Subodha Kumar with the bouquet. Professor Subodha Kumar is the Paul R. Anderson Distinguished Chair, Professor of Statistics, Operations and Data Science, and Founding Director of the Center of Business Analytics and Disruptive Technologies at the Temple University's Fox School of Business. He has a secondary appointment in the Information Systems area as well. He also serves as the Conservation Director for PhD program in Operations and Supply Chain Management. Professor Subodha Kumar has been awarded the Chang Jian Scholars Chair Professorship by China's Ministry of Education. He is also a visiting professor at the Indian School of Business. Professor Subodha Kumar has previously served on the faculty of University of Washington and Texas A&M University.
Professor Subodha Kumar has received numerous research awards and teaching awards and has published over 225 papers in reputed journals and refereed conferences. In 2019, he was elected to become the POMS Fellow. He was ranked #1 in the world for publishing in information systems research. In addition, he has authored books, book chapters, Harvard Business School cases, Ivy Business School cases. He is routinely cited in different media outlets including NBC, CBS, Fox, Business Week, and the New York Post. He is the deputy editor of POMS Journal and the founding executive editor of Management Business Review, among other editorial boards. He was the conference chair for POMS 2018, BSI 2018, and has co-chaired several other international conferences. I extend a warm welcome to Professor Subodha Kumar to ICETOA 2023. I take this opportunity to welcome our second keynote speaker for today, Professor Sriram Narayanan. Before I give the introduction, I request Professor Raghunath Nudran to welcome Professor Sriram Narayanan with a bouquet. Professor Sriram Narayanan is a full professor and also the Kesseler Family Endowed Faculty Fellow of Supply Chain Management at the Broad School of Business, Michigan State University. He earned his PhD in Operations, Technology, and Innovation Management at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Professor Sriram's primary research interests are in innovation, organizational productivity, sustainability, and inclusion in supply chains. He has published more than 30 articles, a majority of which are in top-tier journals including Management Science, Marketing Science, Manufacturing and Service Operations Management, Production and Operations Management, Journal of Operations Management, Strategic Management Journal, Journal of Retailing, among others. In the recent times, much of his research has focused on community engagement and inclusion and better understanding of how supply chain ideas can be applied to facilitate inclusion. He has won multiple awards for teaching, research, community engagement, and service. He holds editorial positions in several top-tier supply chain management journals. He has held editorial positions in several top-tier journals. Professor Sriram has served on the board of Decision Sciences Institute as a Vice President of Professional Development. He is currently serving as the elected Vice President of Publications for Production and Operations Management Society, USA. He served as the co-program chair for the Production and Operations Management Society Annual Conference, served as the research chair for the Decision Sciences Annual Conference in November 2020, and the general chair for the Decision Sciences Conference in 2021. It is our pleasure and privilege to welcome you to ICETOA 2023 conference. Over to you, Archana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ganesh, sir. Without further delay, please join me in inviting our respected director, Professor Madhu Veeraraghavan, sir, to share his insights with us. Sir, if you may.
Okay, so you're able to hear me? No? The mic isn't working. Okay, firstly let me welcome all of you to Manipal and to TAPMI. I don't know how many participants are here for the conference. Can I just have a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 5, 6. She knows you're a faculty also. Okay, so maybe I'll move the mic or without it. No? We don't need this.
our guests and also to participants who have come to TAPMI. So I'm not trying to sell TAPMI to people, but I'm just trying to sort of show what we're doing. So it will be useful. I leave all the brilliant content to Subodha and Sriram. So, for me, very quickly, so I work across 4 areas. I do auditing work mostly, but these days I do a lot of corporate finance work, largely looking at how sunshine induces mood and impacts corporate decision making. I also do corporate governance in emerging markets, and then behavioral finance, which is basically the weather induced mood, and applications to different settings, including marketing and so on and so forth. So that's the publications that I currently have, and revisions that are requested in management science, JDF, KCF, and the Journal of Financial Accounting Analysis. So interesting sort of papers, but given I have 2 PVC roles, as Ganesh did the introduction, I'm not sure how much time I'll find, but I'm trying to see whatever little time I get to get these papers done. Okay, so this is our founder, Lekshit Thonse Anantpai. It's not an A5. 1922 to 1981. This is a small village called Thonse. That's where he was born, and then he went to Mumbai, to Sidham, to do his graduation. And then he was appointed to LIC, they founded Syndicate Bank, elected to Rajya Sabha, was Minister of Railways, Civil Supplies, he was doing the doctoral literature by Government of India, then of course TAPMI Management School, TAPMI. It was not called TAPMI before, it was called Institute of Manipal Institute of Management, but it was renamed TAPMI in his honor. So that's how it's called TAPMI. Formally we call it TAPMI, it's TAPMI Management Institute. About us, we are consistently ranked for the 2 guests who come from the US. There are approximately 3,000 schools. 4,800 schools have closed down in India, so roughly about 3,200 schools in this country. And we're consistently ranked in the top 20 of these schools. We're one of 10 schools to have the double crown, both ASCs and AMBA, and then of course these schools to have the QS ranking. We are prime champions for 2023 cycle. As you can see, the guests who have come from different parts of the country. We have fantastic resources, facilities, infrastructure. We have a 44.11 acre campus, and then we are ranked 38 in the NIR, which is the Government of India rankings that they announce each year. Speak about rankings and accolades. We don't participate in all kinds of rankings. We are very selective in the rankings we do. So Business Week, Outlook, the week, Business Today. So some of these rankings that we participate, that's where we limit ourselves. And then AACs, we and AMBA, of course, are the accreditation that we have. We're also preparing for EQUIS. Hopefully in the next 2-3 years, we'll go to EQUIS as well. We offer 5 programs. The flagship program has been there for almost 40 years is the MBA core, which is the main program that we have at TAPMI. And we have over 6,500 alumni across these programs. So these are very specific. Each program has got a very distinctive feature. This program, we take around 360 to 400 students. That's the number we stop at. We get around 70,000 applications for this program. We have a very specific program in banking and financial services. Again, this is a state-of-the-art program. This is the curriculum is mapped to the CSA, CBOC, the financial FRM, which is run by the Society for Risk. So both of these curriculums are mapped, and we take only 60 students in this program. It's a very tight program. But these are for people who aspire for careers in banking industry. Then we have a program in HR. They're all 2-year programs. And this is mapped with the SHR, the Society for Human Resource Management, the curriculum. We collaborate with them. Again, we take around 60 students only in this program. So again, a very small program. Although, yes, our group size is 60, we probably limit ourselves to 35, 40 in this program. So. Then we have a program in marketing. This is actually focused on selling, but the AAC, which is the regulator, doesn't allow you to use the word selling, so it is called marketing management. But this is a very new program. Again, it's a program that Government of India, 2-year program. We take around 35 to 40. And these are people who aspire to be chief sales officers. That's the sort of aspiration people have this program. So I get a number of applications for this 35, 40 seats. We have a new program which we launched last year, MBA International Business. We only take 30 students in the program. Yes, more programs are also here. You find that this is Master of IB domain, but it's called Functional Skills. So this is a new kid on the block, but we're trying to sort of give a very different speed to this. This is not a trimester program, semester program, a lot of international collaboration. So whatever we do in TAPMI, we do it well. We do little, but we do well. And we make sure we take something and we ensure that nothing is left to chance. So that's a sort of, these are only 5 every month. So a new program coming in TAPMI called the IPM, which I don't know whether Sriram and Subodha others will know. In India, it's called Integrated Program in Management. So I'm indoor and some of the leading lines on this. It's a 3-year undergrad program followed by a 2-year MBA program. So we launched that this year in TAPMI with a 60-seat. So that's the program. Sustainability TAPMI is also a strong school that believes in sustainability. And we do a number of very interesting things. I won't spend much time, but just to show you the 17 SDGs that we have. We have a course, we have a whole set of events that happen, and if you're interested later, Purnima and Ishwar here, they can have a chat with you about how we do sustainability at TAPMI. So these are called SEVA projects, which is compulsory for every student. It's society, environment, values, and attitudes. So each year we source 40 to 50 projects from the local government, and 10 students are allotted to this project, the faculty mentor, and then they work through the year, they present it. It's called a Seva Jatra. Jatra is like a fair in Canada. So that happens around January. This year we did different, we did in February. So what you can see here is each year how many projects we had, and how many stakeholders were involved, and which of the 17 SDGs we actually mapped in that year. So this also gives you a very good understanding of the seriousness with which we take sustainability. It's not just sort of a lip service, it's front and center of whatever we do at TAPMI. So that's important for us. And it's also very important because we have ABBA accreditation as well. They're very, very big on sustainability. They want to see that universities and business schools very active in this space. Research TAPMI, which I think some of you will be interested. We follow the ABDC list. Of course, 2022 list just came a couple of days ago, roughly 2,600 journals. Then we basically categorize like ABDC does, and we look at the FORs, the fields of research. Each area chair, Subodha and Sriram, they have the right to pick the sorts of journals. We allow them to say, well, these are journals that are important to us. This year, until last year, we were truncated the list at FORs, but now we have told the area chairs different areas. Operations, for example, will say, look, we want to take, I'll show you the FORs actually, make it easy. So this is the current primary field of research that the ABDC has. Information systems, economics, accounting, finance, banking, investment management, marketing, logistics, business taxation. Then they have IS, they go down into transport, freight service, logistics. So the ops area will decide what they want. The market area will decide, take all the journals that is listed in FOR. So that exercise is happening. We also look at ABS, we look at FD50 and UTAS. So, I mean, obviously it would be good for faculty to move toward the FD50 programs, but this is not bad. I mean, we made a good beginning. I don't have a slide, I wanted to have it, but I sort of dropped it to show you how research has grown at TAPMI in the last 5-6 years. So the number of A's and A's journals they have is in education, they have 6. Ops and decision science have 66 journals. Information technology analytics, also a small area at TAPMI. 44 journals there, accounting and finance is 80 plus, economics, HR, OB and communication, marketing, and strategy journal management. These are sort of areas we have, and we looked at all of the classifications the ABDC has put. The 2022 list has come up, but I don't think there's significant changes. I haven't had a look, but there are some upgrades and downgrades, and some journals are deleted from the list. There are also B and C categories, which we have left unchanged. We leave it as it is. So we said we are not going to make any changes. It's a lot of large sets of journals. It's an impossible exercise to go and truncate them. Even in A's and A's class, we shouldn't truncate them. And I think from this year, we will allow the entire list in that FOR to be used by the faculty. So that's that. Currently, we have 67 faculty. Hiring, we're still hiring people in all areas. So if there's any operations participant here thinking, well, this is interesting, I would like to put my hat in the ring, we should. So accounting finance is the largest area, there's 17 faculty. And then HR, information systems. It's a very small area, we're still building that area now. Ops was only 1 or 2 faculty, now we're almost 9 faculty in ops. So we're still building the ops area as well. And then of course, strategy and management. So marketing. So all of these areas across, we're continuously hiring faculty with very good research potential. If they have a track record, it's fantastic. If they don't have it, but they have great potential, we still look at them. very favorably. We are also looking for people who are very good teachers, educators. So students really require, they expect faculty to teach very well. So there's lots of support systems in place for us to do that. In terms of qualifications, tells you how many faculty have PhDs, how many are pursuing PhDs. We also have some faculty who come with significant industry experience, but they're pursuing their PhDs now. And the government of India recently said in the UGC report that if somebody has 20 plus years of experience, you can appoint them straight as a professor of practice. So that is now allowed from this year. So we also have several professors of practice, and some of them actually have PhDs too. So I think by next year, we'll probably have almost 95-97% of the faculty who are about the PhDs. And in the recent hirings that we've done, right from IMA to IMK, LI, XLRI, all these faculty we have from all the top schools in India, they all come with PhDs. So they're about to submit or just submitted, going for the different kind of stuff. So that's the faculty qualification. This is the slide I thought I deleted and I have. So this just shows you how the research has grown in TAPMI in the last 5 or 6 years. So we have great incentives that I'll talk about in a minute. We have a very good workload, teaching load. It's 120 hours a year. So it is comparable to many leading schools in the US. In the US, we do much more actually, we 2+2 sometimes. But now we stick around 120, 150 maximum load per year teaching load. So this just shows you how the outcomes have panned out over the last several years. In terms of grants, we also have faculty who have obtained very large grants and working with major research institutions to obtain large grants. So we have grants in Swedish, from Swedish Research Council, NASMA, we have Life Foundation, we have the ACT grant. So a lot of other grants that we faculty have collaborated, sort of work with global schools. Policies and benefits, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what faculty policies we have. In terms of research track, we have a research track which basically has 6 years of teaching in a year with absolutely no administrative load. So 6 years of teaching is all you do, but you've got to have a strong pipeline and you've got to be able to make submissions. I'm not saying publications, but submissions to top journals or at least A-level journals. Then we have a TAPMI academic research grant called TAR. We set aside 5 lakhs each, it's like seed funding. Up to 1 lakh the project is funded. So it can be group project, it can be single application, solo application. So it's that. Then we have a very large incentive. So just to put this in perspective, if a faculty, so let's take for example A, okay, I'm talking ABDCA or ABDCA star. You take an ABDCA star, you get 400 points. Once you complete the workload, if you just random sort of multiply that by the bottom sort of scale, we're talking almost about 9 to 10 lakhs of incentive for a hit in a top journal. If you have co-authors inside TAPMI, then we divide it evenly. If you have co-authors outside TAPMI, the entire one is yours. We don't do any division. Most schools will do that, but we don't do that at all. We say, no, it's fine, it's yours. So we have an excellent faculty development system. And we also have a PDF, which is a professional development fund, which is 1,75,000 per year, which can accumulate up to 5 years. So if you don't use it for 2 years, you have 3,000. You use it for whatever you like. The research money, going visiting your co-authors, doing field work, hiring a market research firm, submission fee to journals, copy editing, whatever research process you want, you can utilize it. Other than buying out your teaching, you can just work with whatever you like in that month. And people accumulate that for 3-4 years, and they have substantial money, they travel around to conferences, they spend some time with the co-authors come here, we can use it for, we're quite flexible. In terms of the school itself, we are a 7th pay school, so we're just starting this year from April 1. We'll be paying 7th pay, especially with the finance committee meeting, the chairman's office. Everybody's gone to and signed off, so we should be able to now pay 7th pay from April 1. We were not paying it before, but it's a very competitive arena that we're in. So this is one of the hygiene conditions now, which is quite good. We have an excellent provident fund gratuity scheme. We have an NPS, which is a national pension scheme. We have medical Medicare facility and insurance up to 3 lakhs, and OPD net 10,000 per year. We have a group lifetime insurance, accident insurance of 50 lakhs. Then we have CPMs, which I told you, which is a comprehensive performance impact. Not only RPMs, everything else is one, only research is there now. So it's a research performance management scheme. So We are very focused on research actually. That doesn't mean we don't know focus on academic stuff, but I mean academic stuff you have to do, you have to teach. But the distinctive factor for me in TAPMI is it is research that differentiates us from other schools, from other private schools, right? Also from any of the lower, the baby irons as they call it. Carl, I spoke to you about school fee investment. So if you have children, up to 10,000 rupees studying in the group schools, the fees reimbursed. We have an inter-subsidy scheme on housing loans. We have LTC, we have 51 days of leave, plus 30-day vacation. And then we have a wonderful campus accommodation facility, concession rates. I think we charge them 3,000 rupees a month for rent in the campus. So that's the sort of policies and benefits we have. Very flexible workplace. Nobody monitors you what time you come, what time you go. There's no attendance system. There's a biometric that is a requirement of the government of India, but as a school, we are very, very flexible school. We all know faculty know what to do. Nobody needs to tell them. In terms of Vision 25, we had done this a couple of years ago, a year ago actually. So at least 10% of the faculty publish in Code A-star journals. At least 5% of faculty publish in A-level journals and 50% in B, so on. And we want people to recruit really good early career researchers. So there are faculty guys from schools who are here, and after this presentation, if you feel it's a really good school for my doctoral scholar to try, please ask them to reach out either to myself or to Raghu or to Raj, who is the lead academic. We're very happy to look at those applications. We are also looking at creating endowed chair professorships. So that is through different organizations, banks, and so on and so forth. So every area should have at least a fully funded chair. So that's our plan for 2025. The culture, which I think this is one of the things I'm really proud about that what we've been able to do, is the culture of TAPMI, which is a really open culture and sort of it's quite enjoyable when faculty can have a chat with you and really free stuff. There's no protocol, we don't have layers of bureaucracy or anything like that. So for me, the C in CEO stands, I always like this because a lot of people think it's a chief executive officer, but it is not. It is basically the curator of an organization's culture. And I think there is very little difference between a director of a B school and a CEO of an organization. I see no difference. It's exactly what you do. Perhaps we do that kind of work but get paid less, but that's fine. That's another day. But I don't see any major distinction in how I run a top B school to how a CEO runs an organization. So the CEO is the curator of an organization's culture. Anything is possible for a company and its culture to listening, learning, and harnessing individual passions and talents of the company's mission. Really, the kind of my culture is my chief CEO. So I really like this is exactly what we should be doing, right? And then I like this also culture-based strategy for breakfast. So if you don't have a good culture in an organization, I really don't think you can do a good job. So if somebody asks me, okay, well, you were there for 6 years, what is one thing you're proud of? I would not bat my eyelid. I would just say it's culture. And that's something that I'm very keen on also creating in the Bangalore campus, where people really should be able to come and have a chat with you. With all the, dissent is something that I actively encourage. People should dissent. We're part of dissenting. It's not very healthy. Everyone's passionate about it, right? So that's what I'm proud about it. While we may not be a 7-pay school, we now are, but even when it was not, I used to say to people, look, somebody can pay you crap loads of money, but you have a really toxic culture. Would you like to work in an organization like that? No. I mean, you don't even want to go to work, but they pay you 4 lakhs a month, 5 lakhs a month. But you just don't want to be there. And there are schools like these, organizations like these, but we're not great paymasters. TCS is a lousy paymaster, but 200,000 people work at TCS. Tatas are not good paymasters at all. But the loyalty is exceptionally high in this organization because they have a great culture. So sometimes not everything is monetarily, you cannot pay everything monetarily. But I understand, there's a competition and you've got to play the game as best as you can. So this is part of the culture argument that faculty at TAPMI should be able to conduct research, teach, and serve. And service is very important for us, right? So what do we mean by research? This is a great paper by Robert Blomfield, Cornell, How to be a Good Professor. This is a paper that I really enjoy the paper and I recommend everybody to read it. Please those who are researching on the PhD programs, sort of entering their academic journey. So So being able to extend the knowledge of the colleagues by studying new pieces, issuing appropriate methods, and presenting these scholars the evidence for or against these novels important and interesting. And teach, Robert says, that being able to create an existing body of knowledge. The students will define learning objectives, specifying how students will apply the knowledge, creating tasks that help students practice, achieve, perform those tasks. A good professor also creates an environment that encourages students to learn and interact with one another appropriately and helps students learn efficiently and enjoyably. And a lot of times when new faculty join in and they have never taught before, something that we do at TAPMI is we don't send them to the wolves. We say, okay, the Dean Academics, Guru Raj will say, why don't you go and sit in 4 or 5 of these classes, meet with this faculty, just have a sense of how things are done. So the bit of hand-holding that needs to be done is done really well at TAPMI, right? And we don't just go tomorrow and start teaching. I mean, you don't have that experience, so you know that, right? So, but teaching is very important. We believe in that. In terms of service, I'm sorry, there are 2 slides to this because there's long paragraphs, so I will break it down into 2. Be able to help. This is something that people need to understand. That as a professor, so when you're an assistant professor, we try not to give you many responsibilities because we want you to teach, we want you to research. As you go up the ladder, we want you to take more responsibility. I'm sure both Subodha and Sriram agree with me that when you're a full professor, like you both are doing, and I am doing, taking a lot of responsibilities, institutional responsibilities. Right? To be able to help others, their own institution, the broader community. The most frequent form is collegiality. Something I'm really happy at TAPMI is this wonderful collegial environment. You know, today it's an ops conference. Many schools will say, it's an ops area, I'm an HR guy, why should I be there? I mean, that mentality we don't have. You know, that's the beauty of the place. Every conference, every event, if the faculty is not teaching, they will be here. If they're not in an administrative setup somewhere in some urgent meetings, they will be here, independent of what their area is. That collegiality, that culture is something that is very important for organizations to grow. As faculty become more senior, service includes administrative and executive roles, such as serving on committees or as officer for the institution, scholarly organizations, example, American Accounting Association. Faculty also provides service to society at large as advisors, consultants, board members, and so on. So that's nice. Ops area, which is what I should be showing you more about. Faculty research interest. So what I've done is I've just put together a list of faculty in the ops area and the research interest. So Amol, Ganesh, some of you may meet, already met them, some of you haven't met them probably. Karthik, Kela, Rahu, Shaili, Sham, Varun, and Vasant. This is the current operations faculty, but we're still hiring. So you can see what sort of research interest they have, and perhaps during break or lunch or coffee time, you're able to have a chat with them, leading to joint papers, joint plans, or visiting positions, and so on and so forth. Faculty publications, ops faculty published in social sciences, and operations research, ICETOA, so some really good journals that faculty are publishing in, and that's nice to see, right? This is a small area, but almost everyone has a PhD or just defended their PhD, so it's 100%. And every faculty in ops area also published, which is just a great thing to see. In terms of research, this is a very interesting slide. These guys told me not to show it, but I'm going to show it. So still make the decisions. So this is cool because if you look at what ops has done, and this is good for the ops area, they are doing much better than any other area in terms of the hits. If you look, for example, at just the A's and A stars, this is phenomenal. This is a very interesting statistic. I mean, I'm going to do this for every area. I'm going to do this now for every area and present it to all the areas and see how it is. But this is a really nice thing to see. The ops area, they haven't got many A stars. That's fine. That'll happen. That'll happen over a bit of time. But consistently, the area has been publishing minimum 4 days each year, which is great to see. Research collaborations. Here are the schools with which ops faculty have been collaborating. So all the leading schools in India and some schools overseas as well. So which is great to see. The next slide also has. And so which is fantastic to actually see faculty collaborate and perhaps go others will visit here or our guys will go there. That's the sort of culture and that's really what we want. Faculty also publishing cases, IB cases. IB 16 cases. Amol is a very big case guy in the ops area. then emerging market, the case center, stage. So faculty are also doing very interesting cases. And some of these cases are used in classes as well. What courses we offer? The obsidian supply chain, advancement, lean management, project management, ops research. Some of these are core courses, some of these are electives. Quality management, Six Sigma, service operations, supply chain, simulation modeling, system dynamics. I'm guessing that is Watson's baby. Sustainability, supply chain management, and CIS, which is a course of clinical study that all areas do offer that. There was supply chain, game theory, service operations, operation strategy, pricing revenue optimization. So, sort of standard sort of core ops courses that you see. Awards, faculty also won several awards. Some of the faculty are Six Sigma Black Belt certified. The second one, I think, is Ganesh Reservation Award, is it? Yes. The Best Paper Award, the IPSI conference, the Ponce India conference. Then for Euro Scholarship, the Euro Summer Institute. So faculty also doing some really interesting work honors and awards. Then the Best Paper for the Emerging Market Showcase Award 2021. Global Colloquium for Experience, Central Learning, and Best Advocacy in Harvard Business Supervision. Now the next slide, I asked them to give me revisions. Where are they? What revisions are they working on? I really want to know one thing here. Okay, so revisions in HRA or ABC, ABS3 and above. So one is Naval Research Logistics, IJPE, MSOM, International Information Management. Somebody's got EJOR. Who was that? Very good. Project Management. So these are all revisions that faculty are currently working on. So which also sort of want to highlight to people who are visiting TAPMI today to get a sense of what the ops area does. And I told you at the beginning, this is not an academic presentation. I'm not doing any papers here. I'm just simply trying to show you what our faculty are doing. So if you're very interested and you feel this is a good place to be, then you're absolutely welcome. That's all I want to say. So thank you very much for your time. Do any hard selling of the ops area. If I did, it's for you guys. But any questions or clarifications you need, I'm more than happy to answer. This is fairly a freewheeling, Q&A session. So the visitors, no. Okay. No questions. Did I did it too well, or I just completely messed it all up? But anyway, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. I will stay for some more time, then I have to head back to my tent. We are hosting the External Affairs Minister this evening and tomorrow. So I still have a number of things to do, get the invitations ready, and final bit of the last minute paperwork we check. So tomorrow is the leadership lecture, 29th leadership lecture at TAPMI. So Dr. S. Jaishankar is the chief guest. Yes. He's arriving to see me at 6:45. So he's going to be running around doing stuff. So I am really sorry if I miss some of the panel sessions or if I don't stay after the team. It's not that I'm escaping. I'm just going to do some more work that is probably not so intellectual, but somebody has to do it, right? So it's my turn to do it. But thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time to come to my talk. Those of you who are TAPMI faculty, you will continue to stay. Those of you who are not TAPMI faculty, will be applying to come.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words were as inspiring as... It's time for what we had been waiting for. It's time for our keynote speaker, Professor Subodha Kumar, to take the stage and share his insights with us. Please join me in welcoming him with a huge round of applause.
day since I've been here. And I was very impressed with this great achievement the school is doing. My first visit to Manipal, but very, very impressive. So thank you again for having me. I'm not going to present one paper. It will be more like a rapid fire round. I'll go through many of the topics that I have been working on lately, and also where I feel that the field is moving on in terms of the operations and analytics. So I believe I have 45 minutes, so I can move and just stop me if I am going too long. Okay? Keep a tap on that. I want to give enough time to sit up. All the insights. So let's get started. I'm at Temple, and most of my research is at the interface of the data analytics and decision analytics. I started my career in 2001 when I finished my PhD at UT Dallas, which now maintains all rankings. And I was the first OM PhD graduate from UT Dallas, actually. It started at that time. It's a large school. My main focus was on operations research models, ROAD models, that's what I've been doing. And that's how the field was. So, I'm talking now more than 20 years back when I graduated. The field was very different at that time. And the field matured, even though I may look younger, I'm senior to Sriram too. The field had changed, and that's how the research had changed. A lot of my research has evolved. And now I work on the interface of these two. And most of the time I start with some kind of data and then move more to the decision models where I do different kind of optimization models. I do a lot of OR models still and some game theoretic model as well. And in the data analytics side, I do a lot of econometric models, but also I do some machine learning and so on. So, I'm a big proponent of, it was very nice to see some of the things I heard in the presentation was about all the departments being in. I think that's a very important part. I feel that we have been too siloed in departments and we should really be talking like a whole research, even beyond business school. I think a lot of my work with the engineering school, I work with medical school, and I think that's how we should think. We should think about solving problems. So when I started my career in 2001, people were very apprehensive about interdisciplinary research. And in fact, some very senior scholar told me, you are putting your legs in too many boats, so you will sink. But the field has changed now. Now we like interdisciplinary. In fact, so a lot of, I keep writing these editorials on interdisciplinary work, and you will see that flavor today in my talk as well. So these are some of the articles that I have put here. Actually, the last one was our 30-year anniversary issue of production and operations management, where many scholars have contributed from, in fact, all top journals, editor-in-chief, past editor-in-chiefs have written in that how operations field have grown in 30 years. That's the time when all the journals started. MSOM started a little bit later, JOM started a little before that, but that's how the field has really grown. So this was co-edited by Professor Chris Stack, former editor-in-chief of MSOM, and myself. Please read that. It has 26 articles from all top scholars in the field, and you will really see that how field has grown. You can always go to this place, you can always put this QR code and go to my website. So I put different topics, and I have only 45 minutes. I have already taken 3-4 minutes out of that. So that's why I told you to be rapid fire round. But I will take you enough into each of these that what kind of work I have been doing on these fields. Now you will see that why so many bullets here. Another thing that I really loved in the previous presentation was that, as a faculty, when we say research, teach, and serve, research is all about we have to keep writing dissertations. Our research or learning should not end, and does not end when we finish our PhD. And I took it very seriously from early part of my career. So my goal has been from very start that every 3 years I'll try to write a new dissertation, and I take it very seriously. And what I mean by that, take a new topic which I have never worked on, take a new methodology that I have never worked on. And I sit down in classrooms. I attend the full classes, I go to econ, computer science, wherever I think I lack. And I think that is the reason why you see so many bullets. So when I start with the dissertation, I don't totally leave it and I continue with that. So I will start with my current dissertation, which I am doing, which is around the blockchain and disruptive technology. And this is the reason why it is my current dissertation, because this is the center I direct and we work on a lot of industry projects around that. So a lot of these projects here have still not been submitted because dissertation is still ongoing, right? So I will submit it in a year or two. And mostly they are industry projects. But that's how I start and I eventually terminate. And then I will go in the bullet line. So please stop me at any point. Any project you want to discuss more detail, I'll be more than happy. I have no intention to just finish all of it. So, this blockchain, as we all know, is a big elephant in the room, and a lot of money is going into that. And both when I started working with these companies on blockchain implementation as well as on the research, I noticed that there are a lot of issues that as an operations researcher, information systems researcher, or marketing researcher, or any business school researcher we can handle. So I've been looking at many of these problems. I'll talk about a couple of them. And I will break each of these topics into two parts, data analytics and decision analytics. Data analytics is mostly on data driven and decision analytics will be optimization. Sometimes it is mixed, that's how the whole publication thing is moving. So, one of the issues with blockchain we are facing right now is scalability. That how can we make these blockchains really apply to these private blockchains, create business solutions, right? That's when the real value of blockchain will come. We mostly see these public blockchains in cryptocurrencies and all, but the real value lies on where JP Morgan Chase or different supply chains like Walmart, they all go and move completely to blockchain. Right? But the big problem is scalability. So now how do I examine the different scalability? So I've been looking at different scalability solutions that have been coming over time. And the data still is in the crypto world, although I'm not that interested in the crypto part. But we found some very good data on Bitcoin, where they did something called SegWit a few years back. And what was the idea of SegWit? SegWit was that before I get into SegWit, how at least the Bitcoin world work, and a lot of these features are maintained in other blockchain. Those who work on blockchain, that you basically start a transaction, and I think some of my animations are not working because a real version of PowerPoint. So, this thing. So the idea there was that you basically start the transaction, and there are minors and there are some delays in that. So a few years back in SegWit, what they did, they took out the part of the signature and moved out of the block. And the idea of SegWit was that it will improve the efficiency of the transaction, which will help in scalability. So we took this data, and it's a very nice study because we have data on who is using pre-SegWit, who is using post-SegWit. So the platform allowed people to use either pre-SegWit or post-SegWit for their transactions. And based on that, we look at transaction fee and transaction quantity. Now, this is where the whole key chunk of research goes. We take data from 29 prominent service providers, around $1.13 trillion, and then we got into this econometric model. So most of my empirical work, you will see these kind of econometric models. Although I'll get into DIDs and all a little bit later, but this is a pretty standard econometric model. We look at what happens to the different aspects. Again, I will not get into too much detail of that. As I told, I'll be more than happy to answer. Now, on the optimization side, one issue is that why or what can lead to more and more adoption. That's where the blockchain will really make value if more players start adopting it. So those are the things we don't have data on, but we can create mathematical models. So this is a game theoretic model that I work, and this is, most of these are with doctoral students. In fact, more than 80% of the work here you will see is with doctoral students. In this paper, we try to see that in digital advertising market, what are the issues in the adoption of blockchain. And as I told, this is a game theoretic model. We are revising it right now for ISR. Another thing, especially for young researchers, these days you get a lot of reject resubmit. I can tell you is these days 70 to 80% of my publications start with reject resubmit, which is good news. So reject resubmits are not really bad thing. It's actually it's the reality of the market. Whether it's good or bad, that's a different story, but that's how things start. So that's what we are revising right now. Just to give you a little bit flavor of why digital advertising industry, because there are a lot of companies coming in that. In fact, Toyota is moving a lot of their ads to blockchain using Lucidity platform. And the questions come is that what can platforms do to improve the adoption of blockchain? That is the idea here. And this has to come from advertisers, this has to come from publishers, and as well as the blockchain platform has to come. So that's the goal here. And as I told, I'll keep moving. Please stop me at any. Another area where I think a lot of our research can be helpful is in healthcare AI. That's where the real focus is. And here, these are again industry projects right now, and I will convert them to papers. That's the plan. But in the healthcare, we have a lot of expertise where we can make a big difference. And it comes about both cost and efficiency of healthcare. So some of the projects that I'm working on, how we can use AI in the parts of healthcare where either the process is inefficient or we can improve the quality by providing this technology. I will talk about, I have a separate section on healthcare, I'll go more into that. A lot of my work on the personalized treatment for cancer patients and so on. We actually recently got a grant from MIT on personalized cancer treatment for India and China patients. And we have collaborated with All India Institute of Medical Sciences. They have given us some data. And my collaborator in that project is Professor Georgia Perakis, who is the current editor-in-chief of MSOM. Some of her students and some postdocs have been working on that. But that I'll come a little bit later. This project is with a company from Philadelphia. We have been working on a series of projects. This one was about diabetic foot problem, which is a huge problem actually. Diabetic foot has been the cause of a lot of deaths, and it is very costly affair. And one of the big reasons why it is so problematic is because the initial part is very complex. People don't go for the initial checkup that what kind of treatment. And that's where our collaboration came. So when I was talking to these people, they told that, well, we have been talking about thermal imaging for almost a decade, but we don't know how to deal with that. And I told, well, that should not be that difficult now, thanks to all Facebook and Google or Meta and Alphabet. In the last few years, we have very good algorithms. So that's where we collaborated. So we basically had to take all these thermal images first. And through these thermal images, we did a whole series of things that you will expect. Those who work from analytics, we went into the deep learning neural network tree. And then the whole outcome of this whole project was that can we proactively identify that what kind of treatment is needed based on this thermal image. So basically that is the plan here. Good? No. So now this is a series of projects that we have started here, and this is one of them. We have extended this to pulse wave. So we did the similar study with the pulse wave data, where we looked at the pulse wave and tried to see based on this pulse wave data how we can predict. We are right now working on two projects. One is the EEG data, which is the brainwave data, and we have tried to see that we are looking at the seizure problem and many other problems. Actually, we just got a grant from NIH, National Institute of Health, on there's an interesting problem with pulse oximeter. Those who know a little bit about medicine, pulse oximeter readings, they are actually, the whole pulse oximeter devices are designed for the white skin color. So the readings are very good on white skin color, but any other skin color, the readings are not correct. So how physicians, and why is that? Because all the data has been tested on that. That's how the whole process happened. So what physicians do basically, they basically themselves little bit mark it off, based on their own judgment. So the grant that we have got from NIH, which includes a person from biomedical engineering and a doctor, of course, and a company, is very simple. We say that take the pulse oximeter, put our sensors on top of it, which is designed by biomedical engineering group, and that will take the skin color, and that's where our center comes. So we will do the algorithm, and we will say that, okay, what is the actual skin color? Now we know the formula, we put that back in, and then it gives the correct reading, and the medical school basically we are doing that. That's how the whole grant is. Now, this is where people say, where is business school in here? Business school, we are pretty good in algorithms. We do data analytics, we teach that, right? And these are the real applications. So, a lot of my work, and that's where I call this, all these disruptive technologies are going to make a change. You may ask, can it be published? Yes, it can be. That is a different story. Maybe in the afternoon we are doing a little bit more on that, so I'll go a little bit more into that. Yes.
How is singular detects the EEG?
What?
How is singular detects this EEG?
No, the EEG is a different one. The skin color is only detected by the sensor. So that what sensor does is that it takes the color. It's like very thermal imaging kind of thing. So basically, it takes the image of the skin, and then we run an algorithm to find the pigment color. That algorithm is not real. That we run it. Yeah. So deep learning algorithm. Yeah, that's not the easy part. That part actually is not that difficult even and those algorithms exist in Python even, we have to find the right library as well. That. So this color detection part has been there, right? Means we have been doing the face recognition and all, they have been using this. That's what Google has used and Facebook has used. So we are using very similar. In fact, we are using a variant of that. But good. So, so there are a lot of extensions to this that I am not talking about, and I am talking more than. So this company which I work with, they filed a lot of patents, and they are not very happy me talking about all these ideas. So that's okay. You are all the technicians here. But this is where the real action going on in the combination of the analytics and going to healthcare and so on. And then with one of my recent PhD students also worked on shared economy. That's another area where a lot of work going on. This is my most recent management science paper, and this is started with Trajectory Summit, by the way. So this is another encouragement as how Trajectory Summit is not too bad. But this is also a very good example of how this was accepted by the operations group in management science. Professor Janet Saunders, who herself worked on a lot of these disruptive technology ideas. This is about industrial IoT, which is another very interesting thing. So what Boeing has done, for example, Boeing they of course sell planes, but they also sell maintenance services. Now there are a lot of competitors in maintenance services, third-party players who also provide maintenance. So what Boeing has done, they have created an industrial IoT, which they say their competitors can use this, who are providing maintenance services. So they provide these IoT services to their competitors, who is vying for the same market, in the maintenance one, not the plane. Right? And why would they do that, and how they can be beneficial, where they should do that, where they should not do that. It's a game theoretic model. That's what we have done. So again, these are the kind of thing, and that's how the industry is going. So we need to identify all those problems. And then I also have some interest in this industry 5.0 cybersecurity. I'll not go too much detail of that. A lot of collaborations in India. Actually, I come ISB 6-7 times a year, and I also have several collaborators in IIM Bangalore. Actually, the last paper is with faculty and a former doctoral student from IIM Bangalore. So that's that I think area is going. More recently, I got interested in this. This is a data from. This was a project actually by Alibaba. Alibaba is one of the largest in China. and they have a financial arm called Ant Group. So they had given us this project. So Ant Group recently we started using this AI agent for individual investors. They have been using for corporate investors for some time. So individual investors is a very new thing. And they wanted to see that what is the impact of using this AI agent for individual investors. So does it increase or decrease the investment and so on. As a new one, again, I think this is on the domain of fintech, which goes into now finance operations or whatever you call it, but some interface it goes on, right? But I think that's another area where I think all of us can collaborate and work together, right? Fintech is a growing area. So a lot of my new interest is on fintech. That is going to be my next dissertation. It's a start of that. But a lot of new problems are coming on that, like social trading and so on. We're talking about microfinance, we were talking earlier, which is an old thing. But a lot of new lens is coming in that using all this technology part. Right? So a lot of new problems are coming. So that's where I will stop the first domain. Any questions? Good. Ask some tough questions that I cannot answer, which is always good, you know. Then I can refer to my co-authors. Yeah.
No, so you were discussing about the importance of interdisciplinary
Right.
research, right? So one of the practical difficulties in getting those papers published is the peer review process, right? Because when we sort of collaborate with people across the way, so where, like at least what I have experienced is how do you position the paper, right? So
No, very good point. Actually, that's a positive thing. Actually, that was one of the peer review process was one of the practical reason why I started interdisciplinary. Why? See, positioning you have to read journals and do that, and I'll talk more on that in afternoon. But let's say I have a paper which is IS, OM, and marketing, right? And every area has like 3 UTD journals, like topmost journals. Now, if it is on interface, and if I position it well, I have 9 journals access to, and I have done that. Sometimes I tried operation journals. They all rejected. I went to information system. They all rejected published in marketing, and vice versa. I have done that. So actually, if you position it well, you have access to many more journals now than earlier, right? You have a list of journals in each area. So interdisciplinary work, but you have to cater to that. But it can be done. It is a positive rather than negative.
Can you please like this artificial intelligence analyst? What are the KPIs for this? And
So here we have mainly looked at that the investment where AI was used. Those investors invested more money. They invested in more risky versus less risky. They actually their average investing increase or total overall increase. Those kind of KPIs. So how much investment is being done? What kind of investment is being done? What has been the returns out of that? So regular financial KPIs.
Sir, I can see that a lot of work is on the game theory. So it's
Right side is game theory mostly. Here all of them are game theory right side. Left side is all.
So it's very good for publication avenues are very great for game theory. But when we start presenting the game theory to the audience, there are generally a lot of questions about its empirical validation. So how to counter that?
No, so see, by the way, the game theory, the whole supply chain world applies the whole the value of information literature. That is practically applied in companies. So HP, IBM, they all have applied it. So it's not that it's not the practical thing. If you're asking about how to validate that, you can validate it multiple ways. Some of the papers we actually collect actual data to validate. Some of them you can do experiments.
But sir, when we are taking some assumptions in game theory,
Of course.
so to justify those assumptions, it becomes really difficult.
No. So that's why you have to be careful. Don't take assumptions which are totally outrageous. You have to be balanced out. See, when game theory started, early 2000 work were like outrageous assumptions. Nowadays, you cannot publish this kind of work. If you go to this paper, they are not outrageous assumptions. They are reasonable assumptions, which companies are okay with. See, you cannot have a model which captures every part of the nuance. No practical model in the world for any company takes that, right? They have to take some assumption. As long as they are reasonable, we are okay. So you're right. some of the earlier papers did not used to do that, but recent papers they use reasonable assumption, not unreasonable assumption. So that's where the top journals as well as practicality will come from that. In fact, most of these papers are with industry projects and we apply many of them. So we are not going, especially the healthcare ones, I will go and apply all the productivity models. But so we have to be careful. You can't be too outrageous. Those days are gone with outrageous. And a lot of management science paper in early 2000s were very outrageous assumptions, but those days are gone. So, good. Ask questions, and as I told, I'll go through these different topics. I'll spend less and less time as I go forward because this was my most recent dissertation and spend more time. And right before that was my social media analytics, which I will say I started around 2015, 2016. In fact, it was from very different forces that led me to some of my marketing colleagues got me interested. In fact, one idea came from Bangalore when I was visiting, I believe in 2015, and I got more intrigued into that. These numbers tell the story why it is so important. And my first work was I did a field experiment. So I do a lot of field experiment work with a company in New York which is in prediction market. And this was a young PhD graduate from UT Austin. And he came to me and told us this interesting idea. And as I told, 80 to 90% of my work is either with the PhD students or fresh PhD students. So he told that this company is interested in running this. So idea is very simple. And this was very early work, right? So that time we didn't know much about all this whole big work. So this is a prediction market where anybody can go and vote yes and no for anything. It could be like a game, it could be weather, it could be stock market. And if you're right, then you get some points which you can use for many things. And we had a lot of work in psychology literature talking about why people get involved in these kinds of things. But we did not know that why so many people are rushing for it. The same question is coming right now with Insta Reels and all. What is the real motivation why people are spending so much time, right? And I plan to replicate this study with this new thing as well. But that was the goal here. So we set up a field experiment. We collaborated with the company. So we created some account within the system. We created some fake followers, real followers, and so on to do this study. And the idea was to understand that why people are participating, what are the theories behind it. So generating theory here, that was the goal. Now, when I was working on that, then we started collaborating with a company called Yelp. Yelp, those who don't know, it's an online review platform. They basically started giving reviews for restaurants and there are many other things. In 2009, they did something very interesting. They told that business owners can go and respond to the comment. That feature was not there before 2009. In fact, this is a very common place right now, but it was not a usual feature when the whole social media started. It means business owners didn't have an option to go and respond directly to the customers. So we wanted to see that what is the impact of adding such kind of feature for platform, for business owners, and who should be responding more than the others and so on. It's not only that the bad ones should respond more. And our focus here, as you can see, the bottom block was only looking at the impact on total business, spillover effect, and when to respond. That was the idea. And that was the first paper. But that led to my whole dissertation, which I would say. Because when I was working with them, we realized that they have some system for flagging fake reviews. So we got very intrigued and I was talking to them that how they designed this fake review thing. And most of this fake review detection was very rudimentary, at least in 2013, 2014 when I started talking to them. So we told that why don't we take, at that time in machine learning, the new algorithm for feature engineering was getting popular. That was started, I think around 2013, 14 started getting prominent. Where the idea is that you look at different features, combine them, and then we make prediction based on that. So you may not have a labeled data whether it's fake or not, but looking at the features I can do. So we looked at the problem of fake reviewers, not fake reviews, because most of these reviews are bought, and then somebody pays money for that, and that's how it works. So these are the two papers, series of papers we published in JMIS, which is a reputed journal in IS, it's not in UPT, but in 350 and so on. We look at these different features, combine them, and I have used that later on many other papers, which is really, we look at the review gap, number of reviews, what kind they submit reviews and so on. And then this feature engineering is very powerful actually in predicting many places where you don't have labeled data. So we use the supervised learning first and unsupervised learning. So this was a new method I started learning too. I told dissertation I have to learn new methods. Right? I had never done machine learning in my life. No, it's not something that I learned in my PhD, but it was very intriguing. So I went to this courses, I took several courses on machine learning and I felt comfortable. In fact, last year my dean asked me to do the whole demo of how to run deep learning for our students and faculty. So he told me, you start run away, right? You design the whole thing. And I did that. It was a very good exercise. I wrote the whole code on Python. If anybody interested, I can share the whole rule book on how to learn deep learning models. Very easy, it's not very difficult to do these days. Python is like English language anyway, so anybody can. I think in 20 years you'll only be talking in Python. So when I was working on that project on fake reviews, I realized one interesting thing, that all this world of Amazon's, Flipkart's, Alibaba's, they are very smart in algorithm. I know if I can write which is a very high accuracy, how can they not fix it, right? So there is something fundamentally wrong here, right? And then it was obvious that maybe they don't want to fix all of it, right? It works for them. So this was a paper with another doctoral student from Tsinghua University, China. Actually, he got the best paper award in ICES, which is a large IES conference. And now we got rejected with some in management science we are revising. Here the idea was that, then you're asking about the game theoretic model. It's a game theoretic model, but we have tried to keep it as close to reality as possible. So the question is that why these companies are not fixing, and then we like the game theoretic model. And when I was working on that topic, I got into this whole idea of influencer marketing, which is a big area right now. So what do we notice here? Any striking thing in this one you see here? Anything? Look at the accounts. Is any account belong to an organization? Which one? Yeah, this is because of Ellen, right? So it's all individuals, right? Twitter is not the top 10 most followed Twitter account, or Coke, or Microsoft, right? These are the biggest brands, right? In marketing, we know the brand value of these companies are highest, but not on social media. And this is important because social media marketing in 2023 will surpass all other form of marketing, right? So that means the individuals are becoming more powerful than the regular brands. And that's where the human brand angle comes into play. And that motivated, and this is the first paper I wrote, this is with again a faculty from Bangalore, he has left now, Sriram is marketing faculty there. We collaborated and collected the data from Indian election of 2014, which was the biggest election in terms of the social media. And we look at then what is the impact of the human brand and the related brand, which is party in this case, right? I was not as much interested in election interest initially, I was more on human brand, but then election itself was very intriguing idea to look at that. So we look at around 23 million tweets that discuss Indian election. We started collecting data, we collected all tweets that discuss Indian election from December of 2013 and few days after election. And we tried to see that, what is being discussed. That's where, again, we went into the sentiment analysis and so on. Then we combined with the econometric model. That's another thing about publishing. You can see if you have a pure machine learning paper, people complain that, as I told, it's not very difficult to run those, right? So they say, what is the intellectual contribution? And why it's not a computer science paper, why a business school paper, right? So you have to combine that with something. That positioning is very important. So a lot of my machine learning paper I combine with optimization or econometric model and position it well. And that's what we did a very interesting story. Of course, the most talked about hashtag was Modi, but second most talked is interesting. I can talk offline on that. Now, when we're working on that, now this is where the combination of the optimization and empirical part comes into play. So we took that idea and then we told, why don't we optimize the selection of influencers? And here I went back to my old training of OR training. We went to OR models, and most of my OR modeling papers, see, when I work, I go back to my advisor and make him my co-author because he taught me and he knows more than me anyway. So, and this was the paper we got in mathematics. And this paper is a classic combination of, it has empirical, very heavy empirical, it has machine learning, and then it has optimization with OR models, not game theory actually, it was a different OR model. And that's how you can combine multi-methodology. And this paper is more cited by marketing people than operations people, right? So again, interdisciplinary work also comes into picture. And then I have more recent work in social media. Another thing we look at, there is a lot of trademarking of hashtag going on right now, which is against the notion of hashtags. Why would you trademark a hashtag, right? Because trademarking is controlling the use of hashtags. Social media says it should be full blown, right? So why companies are trademarking? So we look at that problem here, and this is the paper we recently published last year. But this is one which is intrigued me the most. So this one was another one where we did a field experiment. So another concept is coming, it is very popular in China, coming in India now, and then going into other parts, social pricing. And the idea of social pricing is, which you might have seen, that let's say you go to purchase, this is we collaborated with a Chinese company. This is also not like data collection, this is a collaboration with a company. So in this company, what they did, that once you purchase, it's an online grocery store. You purchase the item, they say that you have to send your card, code card, what you have purchased, to your friends. And in China, what is used is WeChat, not WhatsApp. WhatsApp is not allowed. There is a version of WhatsApp. So you have to send it through WeChat, and in 30 minutes, if somebody looks at your card and says that I have looked at it, they don't have to purchase anything, just look at your card. So you are sharing your private information. They say yes and you get discount. And depending on how many people say yes, I have seen it, you get more and more discount. Now some other companies have done that, you have to purchase and all, but this company they have not done. Right, so what is the validity? These are even sustainable models, really think about it. And what value they are giving, companies, right? What is the company's value? Why they are giving discount in that? Awareness, free advertising, right? They give free advertising there. And they give a little discount. So here we set up the whole model. We selected people who get fixed discount, who don't get discount, who get discount in this way. And these are the real people, even though we randomly selected these people, but these were the real buyers and all who were so these are some of the things that I think will help us in knowing better. Another stream of work which I do, which is another interdisciplinary, is on the HR analytics. HR analytics is another big area, which has a huge interface with operations and IS actually. So I worked with a company called Developing in Philadelphia, and this was the first paper we published in ISR. So they create these apps, and they have done it for many companies now. And what these apps do, using this app, you can rate anybody in the real time. So, and these are used for salary raises and all. It's not, so they are trying to replace the annual evaluation or supplement the annual evaluation with this. And you can rate your boss also. So your boss, your subordinate, your peer. And several companies, some hospitals have implemented in their groups and all. One financial institution has done that. So this company designed this app and they sell to this company, they designed it. Now, one of the, or two of the owners of the company, they are practice faculty example, very good. So they came to me and they told, can we write papers? I told, of course. And I told we have to run a lot of experiments, so we designed a lot of experiments, and we have written around 7 to 8 papers on that. It's an ongoing process. It's very intriguing. The first paper, we just looked at the basic idea. The second paper we look at what happens to the network effect of that eigenvector centrality of that. So that got published last year. The third one we look at, you can also go and ask for feedback. Request feedback. They don't have to give it, but you can request. So if somebody requests, does it change the nature of feedback? That's what we look in the third one, right? That's the interesting thing. Should you encourage seeking feedback or not? And we look at the length, we look at, again, we go into sentiment analysis, that what kind of comments are coming and so on. That is kind of very nice. And we have two more that we have submitted that I have not added here. One is on gender. We look at how the gender pair works, which is another big question, right? And then we are looking at some more intrigue part. But this is, again, interdisciplinary, right? I could have published in HR or operations or it's hard to say where it will go. And I do some more work in here. Actually, the one paper that is very interesting, this is another business model which is coming. It says that, let's say you purchase an online course. It says that you purchase the course, and then after purchasing, for next 30 days, every day go and talk about my course on WhatsApp, okay, or Facebook. And if you do that for 30 days, you will get your money refunded. But if you do it only for 20 days, you don't get your money back, okay? So again, free advertising. So we model this one again using a gate theoretic model, and we work with one company in China on that. Another thing in China which is becoming very popular, and US also, is live streaming. Live streaming means, they will some influencers will go and do live streaming, and they will sell product during that. So we have tried to do some of the modeling of that. That is submitted. And with one PhD student in marketing, I worked on satirical news. And this is based on India data. This what fake news? India has one satirical website which is going out. They've got data from that. We try to see that how satirical news versus regular news makes it. And I wrote this book last year. The one with whom I wrote the first paper, I still work with them. So those who are working in the area here, we try to bring some new ideas that will be ongoing on social media. Okay. Any questions? Still okay? I've tried 15 minutes. Or 5 minutes? Almost time. 12:30 for Sriram, right? So I'll go 5 minutes. How much do you have time to Sriram? No, don't be hesitant. I have 5 minutes. So another area I work very closely on healthcare, and I have touched on this earlier a little bit. This was my dissertation before social media. This I started around 2010-11. When I moved to Texas A&M, we had a faculty in information systems and engineering. They had got like $6 million grant from NIH. I was not part of the grant, but I got a lot of interesting ideas from there. So the first paper I did here I'm presenting, I'm not presenting some of the older papers. This I did with Fracto, which you might have heard is an Indian online platform company. And here we looked at Fracto, that how adding a feature change the behavior and all. I'm not going to detail. But we replicated this study for the Chinese online market. So we worked with 2 Chinese online healthcare portals. So this is where the idea comes, right? So you live in Indian context, China context is very different. So when we did, it was a very different set of questions there. Actually, we have done a couple of papers on them. And then of course the US healthcare one, where the data getting healthcare is very complicated, but we collaborated with one of the healthcare information exchange. And we have written a series of papers with them. This actually came in the February issue of management science just last month. So if you're interested, you can read that. And then I've done here, this is again how you can use different methodology. The first paper was a game theoretic model, second is an OR model. Right? So similar idea with different problem, and we took different companies for example here. This was a real company problem. So with different methodology, we did it in ISR and OR, and this is the real interdisciplinary. You can go in IS or marketing or operations. And then this was a paper I had mentioned earlier, that breast cancer treatment, personalized breast cancer. Here we collaborated with some hospitals, and we have created personalized treatment for breast cancer patients. So most of the breast cancer patients, they get the fixed doses, this or this. Here we say, why don't we take all the data and create personalized treatment? Like what we are doing in fintech these days, in microfinance, similar idea here. And this is the grant we have got, the new one from MIT, where we are replicating for India and China. We haven't got any China data, and you know you can help. But India, if you know more, we are collaborating with things right now, but we will be happy to take more. And more recently, I got interested. Now I'm getting more into deep learning. So this is again a field experiment with the company that if you put the doctor's face on the website, how does it make difference in how many people take appointment? And for what kind of treatment? The more critical treatment versus non-critical. Also, the smiley face versus non-smiley face. This is a very interesting thing. You want a seriousness, right, in doctor, right? So maybe too smiley may distract you, right? That is the question, right? You may think that this guy is not very serious. So we have done a series of experiments on that. That how the face impact the doctor selection, their recommendation, and that is the whole idea. It's a little touchy issue, but very important, right? These days in online portals and all. People have done with Expedia and all, but not in the healthcare. So I will see this we have just submitted. So maybe we may get totally trashed that should not talk about it, or they may like it. I do a lot of work on operations side. I will not go into that on healthcare. So as I told, I've got a little bit signal to finish it faster. But stop me if you have any questions. Now this was my actual PhD dissertation. In '98 I started working on digital advertising before Google came into picture. Yes, yes. Yeah. So dependent variable here, how many people selected this software? No, so we work with this platform. Oh yeah, these are not like, I am not extracting, this is collaboration. Yeah, these are the company wanted us to do. They wanted to do this. Yeah. These are not like you go and extract from the websites and all. Man, most of these projects are collaboration in the company, not this. Yeah. See what happened? Till 5 years back, I was going to all these companies and asking for data. Now they come and say, please run an experiment. So that helps a lot because of my center mostly. So now, this was my original dissertation, but 20 years back it was different world. But this was what we worked with a company called Chitika in Boston, which is now called Sidewalk. Actually, this those who know Informs has something called Wagner Prize. This was one of the finalists in that. So we actually again took this practical problem and did the award models and save money for them. But more recently, I have got into this how this contracting works in e-retailing. And here we have used differential games. Those who work on optimal control theory, you may have heard about differential game again. I'm not getting into the technical aspect of that. This is on the behavioral ad, and look at the selection of journals, right? I published some in operations, some in IS, depending on positioning. I could have easily published in operations or IS, vice versa. This is an interesting, when to show the ad and how long to show the ad when you're watching a video. So what should be the idea? If you're very excited, I should show the ad, right? So that you still not run away, right? So we use the reverse of inventory model that we all know in operations. That inventory is low, you order. Here you say excitement is high, then you do. Only thing you have to do, you have to track the excitement, right? But these days you can do that in the paper we talked about that. But that's the basic idea of the paper. It could have easily been published in operations journal, but we went with IS. And then I have done work on the online fraud. I have been working on that. And some of them, one of them we revised for management science right now to assistant professor. Very happy. This is the book I wrote around 5 years back, 5-6 years back, based on again my dissertation. And to summarize, some other areas I work, one is on IT and platform management. Again, I have some work on software vulnerability. I'll be happy to talk more in detail later. This was my first work example. That two states, for example, if there are two states, they don't have to compete for IT. If there's a large state and a small state, they can share their IT. This paper is about that. Government IT. Yes.
So one of the problem marketers are facing these days, advertising is an interruption to our audience.
Yeah.
We are paying to skip ads.
Right.
I have subscribed to YouTube Premium because I don't want the interruption.
Yes.
How are they able to?
See, this is an ongoing problem, and what you showed, I bought the service. So what happened, we moved too much about the ad-supported models, and now I think we will have to some scale back, more and more people. Now, but earlier people were not paying. Now people will pay because they see the disruption. So ads have helped them in doing that. But this is an ongoing problem, and the people will keep moving around. There's no easy solution. They have to make money, right, somehow, because they are giving you content. So either they charge you or they show you ad. Right? So think about that. Otherwise, content will go away. So there's no easy solution to that problem. It's an ongoing problem. It's good for us. We'll get many research ideas on that. This was collaboration with ISD faculty, where we worked on the congestion problem in cloud computing. Again, in this of time, I'm going to speak on that. This is one of the papers where perseverance is the key. This is going for 6 years. And in 5th round in MISU, and was rejected in 2 other journals before that, after 2-3 rounds. It involves 2 of my former PhD students. They are almost getting ready to get tenure now. This is another area is bug bounty, which is becoming very big. I'm working on that. And then I'll stop here. Of course, I work on some supply chain analytics, mostly on resilience right now. That's what I have been doing lately. Some postponement resilience. And finally, omni-channel retailing is one area, which was my dissertation in between somewhere, which I mistakes after my first dissertation, I must say. The first paper was the empirical paper. We looked at what is the impact of store opening on online and offline sales and returns. That was the first paper. But again, this was a collaboration with the company. And then the second one was the showroom, which got the best paper award in management science. I'm very happy about that. This is so one of the first papers in showrooming analytical model. We look at how people can, what companies can do to avoid showrooming. This was the Wall Street Journal article, and then we modeled that. That's very simple idea. We took a Wall Street Journal article, we modeled it, and we say which one works for it. But very popular. We had an extension of this paper where we look at the supplier angle now. What is the role of suppliers in showrooming? And this paper is also going on for quite some time. It started with the reject service before now. And we have a lot of extensions of that. Actually, showrooming a lot of my current researchers are working against skip some of these work. I have the recent one now by Sriram is helping with some interesting ideas. So Sriram and I have been collaborating lately, and Alok is here. Alok is coming. So Alok is in one of the papers working, and this was mostly my interest, sustainability and humanitarian operations. This is the last area. The first project was from Chinese government, where they wanted us to. So in China, what happens when people go to find the detection violator, environmental detection violator, they tweak it before the inspectors start. Common problem. So they told, can we design machine learning algorithm? Again, feature engineering. So we use the feature. They have actually implemented this. We use the feature engineering, and they have implemented. And then I have some more work on trading on sales. It's more on the carbon footprint and so on. That's where I think the work with Sriram and Alok comes into picture as well. That also is rejected sometimes. Hopefully we'll get acceptance eventually. Okay. Let me stop here. Sorry if I went over time, but thank you so much for
Thank you so much, sir. Your words have been truly enlightening and have given us a deeper understanding of the topic, and we are sure that it will inspire us to explore new ideas and perspectives. I would now request everyone to join us for a short break as we begin with the high tea, which will be served outside the seminar hall. And we will be here after 15 minutes, that is by 12 noon sharp. Thank you.
Hello, check, hello. 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 Check. Hello. Check. Hello. Mic test. Hello. Check. Check. Hello.
We'll start.
Welcome back, esteemed guests. Join me in inviting our next speaker, who is about to share his insights with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Professor Sriram Narayanan.
For the invitation, Amol, and the conference organizers. It's a great honor. I think it's really difficult to follow Subodha. I should say it's impossible. He's not only senior to me in papers, he's been ahead of me for a very long time. He also has more hair. So it's like in all ways I look up to him. Right? So, but I'm going to do what I can to follow him. I've been working quite a bit on supply chain inclusion for a while, so I'm going to present a few ideas, not too many of them, but I have some views on what it could lead to. So maybe we'll see how it goes. It turns out that when I went to UNC for my PhD, I had no idea what I was getting into. I don't know how many of you went through PhD knowing what you want to do, but I started doing a lot of social work at UNC, because that was my passion. I wanted to really help the community at that time. And then my advisor, he sort of called me for a meeting. He said, "What's happening to your dissertation?" I said, "Sir, I'll work on the paper." You either do community service or you work on your papers. Both of them are not going to happen, right? So you pick what you want to choose. Then I said, I'm going to choose papers for now, because later it can wait. So part of this, I'm saying that story because that's what I faced when I started working on this. Some of the problems I'm going to be talking about, right? So, but for a long time, I always wondered, what does business school does business school deliver real world benefits? I mean, Professor Madhu talked about the idea that you're working on sustainability problems, taking students to community engaged learning, and part of the reason why AACSB has been insisting to business schools that they should be doing this, right? So the key thing here is sort of business schools as catalysts for social change. What is our value, right? What do we bring to the table? What does our research bring to the table? And there's a lot of debate on this going on right now in the community, right? And it's also interesting, right? So this is a year-old data, but you can see how many articles have been produced, right? So how do we make sense of this? What can we do to actually think about taking the kind of work we do into the community? That's what I'm very passionate about, what I would at some point like to do. And sometimes we say there are not many people who actually work on industry problems, but there's a lot of blue sky research, that we don't know how we can apply. And how do we put a premium on impact? Right now, you see, there are groups like the Responsible Research in Business and RRBL Network, Responsible Research and Innovation. In the last at least 8-10 years, many groups have emerged that talk about this idea of how research should be more responsible, research should be more community-facing, and what we can do about it. I've sort of, over the last 8-10 years, moved away from doing many different things. So I like to think of this as community engaged scholarship. How we can use research, which still drives my passions. I love to work on papers, and how we can sort of take it to both teaching and service and to practice, and ultimately that's been a big focus for me, right? So I'm going to share a little bit about what I'm doing. It's probably not perfect. I'm not going to claim that it is perfect, but maybe it can generate some questions that I would certainly love to discuss, right? So my focus has been a lot on UN Sustainable Development Goals, what Professor Madhu also presented early on, and I'm going to tell you what are the areas that some of my research has been hitting on, particularly issues like poverty, issues like decent work, economic growth, issues around industrial innovation infrastructure, how we can reduce inequality, gender, and some of these areas, clean water, sanitation. My research sort of tries to tie into some of these areas, and I will probably present some papers that I've been working on in some of these focus areas. The first one I want to start off is sort of a very area I got into about 8 years ago. It's around disability inclusion. You know, in business school, you don't find people talking about this at all. But it turns out that it's a very big social problem that we all need to be aware of. You know, so about 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, just about when I got tenure, I started working with a company, and I said I just wanted to go visit them, understand what's going on. I had students actually work with prison systems in Michigan, generating projects from those prison systems, looking at ideas around forecasting, capacity planning for shoe plants in jails, you know, because they were all intended to give skills to inmates, right? So that's how it started, and I got really intrigued by that. And a lot of times what happens is when these people come out of jails, you know what they do? Can anybody guess what they do after they come out of jails?
Try to go back.
Yes, exactly. They try to go back because they don't know anything else. Partly because maybe there is something going on in their heads why they engineer that back again, right? So, I also started working with a local organization that works with people with challenges and tries to give them gainful employment. That's how it started. And one of the things that they kept talking about is that it's really difficult to make this economically viable. Particularly, they have serious challenges. Like even in India, for example, you go to many mom and pop stores that serve people with disabilities, and they are marketing products that are made by them. It's very, very challenging for them to be economically viable. They go to their donors and rely on, you know, getting money from them, things like that. So what we have been doing is I looked at both the same problem, both from the operations dimension, and now we are working on a paper where we are looking at this problem from a consumer dimension. So I like to frame it as ROI, how I can tell you that, you know, you should do the right thing. But it's not about doing the right thing, but telling you how to do the right thing, right? We will invest a lot of time on this. When I started this, the reason I told you my advisor story, when I started this, I went to one of my senior colleagues and I said, hey, you know, I'm going to go work with these guys and I want to work on disability-related operations. He asked a very important question to me. He said, why is this different? You know, could you publish a paper out of it? At that time, I couldn't tell him why it was different. I thought I'm not going to publish a single paper from that, but I just wanted to do it, right? So that's how it started. The only difference was when I was a PhD student, I had no choice but to work on a paper where I just knew I would get a publication out of it. But when I became a tenured professor, I thought now I have a choice, I can do whatever I want. That's what Mr. Madhu said, in TAPMI you can do whatever you want. So maybe it's sort of one of those ideas, right? So, but the disability, it's very interesting, right? Because they say that, you know, we must all step up. This is a UN structure where, you know, there's nothing about us without us, right? So basically you have to go talk to the people. You have to understand what's going on in their mind, what do they see, and how that influences how companies think about that, right? So the economic challenge, like I said, is that many of these companies are actually mission oriented. They're not aware by the fact that they want to provide events. There are people who use this. Some people do not like the word disability. That's correct. That's correct. No, I agree with that. But at least in the US, it's very common. So they call it persons with disabilities, individuals with disabilities. But you know, you can frame it this way. We have some other framing that we will talk. No, I have some other framing. I'll come back and talk about that in a second. Yes, thank you. That's a good question. So let me tell you the operations of this, because that's what's more intriguing.
So the curb effect.
Curb.
You started talking about, huh?
It's basically systems that you design for people with challenges actually tend to be good across the board.
Okay.
Like for example, the ramp, right? So if I'm already aging, so I'd rather use the ramp than climb the steps, right? So something to think of. So this is from Henry Ford's autobiography. Okay. So if any one of you has not read it, I'm a big fan of history. I love to read different books every now and then. So this is what happened when Henry Ford had serious labor shortages. Okay. So he said, I'm going to commission a study where he wanted to get the best out of all his workers. And imagine Henry Ford did the assembly line, absolute standardization, right? If you are operations scholar, you think, oh, Henry Ford was somebody who didn't tolerate a single deviation in what was happening in the assembly line. Look at what he did on the people front. Okay, so basically he commissioned a study where they classified 7,882 jobs. 949 they said were heavy work, requiring strong, able-bodied men. This was a man-dominated environment in assembly line. So please, if you find it gender sensitive, don't get upset at me. We'll talk about Henry Ford, but it's still what he used. And then he said, ultimately, there were about 3595 jobs that had no physical exertion and performed by weaker sort of men. Then what he did is, the study went on further to say that they classified these studies, and they said that about 670 could be filled by people with no legs, okay? 2,637 by one-leg men, 2 by armless men, 750 by one-arm men. It's just amazing, actually. I've been just trying to get my hands on their study. I don't know when I'll get it. But the fact that they could actually say that you're recruiting kind of people, over-recruiting are you being thoughtful about how you are recruiting, putting people in factories, putting people to work, right? And it turns out that these are the people who are denied daily wages for the most part, underemployed or unemployed and struggling. So we've been working, I'm very lucky to work with this company called Peckham that's about 10 miles away from where I am. And their model is 75% of the people there have some sort of challenges, physical, mental, and many others. And they are a non-profit community vocational rehab, and they provide assessments, and they sort of work on many different problems for different factories, right? So they have many human service programs, and I've learned a ton working with them over the years. In fact, I used to have an ID where they didn't want me to come and enter anymore, so they gave me an ID that I could just swipe and walk into the factory. Finally, after COVID, I just decided to give it back because I was not going there enough. But what they have there, so my first work was in this apparel unit. That's very sophisticated. I've been to Bangladesh, seen many apparel factories, and they, I think, are one of the best, most sophisticated, one of the best technologically accomplished groups. Right? So we worked on one of the studies where we wanted to look at the impact of diversity of disabilities on productivity. Right? So that was our basic question, and the intuition in thinking about employing a diverse range of disabilities in an organization is what Henry Ford was saying. Irrespective of what challenges you have, you could find the right place for a task that you can do, right, in many cases. So what we did was we went in with them, and they collected, they were very good at time studies. So they collected time study data, and we ran a simulation-based experiment with some real-world time study data. And what we actually found was that increasing diversity of disabilities had a positive impact on productivity. Right? So this paper is just forthcoming in months. And so what we did here was we collected archival time study data from about 1,553 employees. That was the count. I say more than 1,400. But then we classified them by skill level, language, disability, and they all had, they were all in apparel manufacturing, very standardized, and we basically designed combinatorial optimization problems where we sort of optimize the productivity of the line in short, right? So the kind of disabilities they had on the line were on, mental illness, physical challenges, visual cognitive impairment challenges. Many people couldn't learn, learning challenges, right? So some of them were schizophrenic, some things like that. So, and many with short-term challenges too, right? And they also, there's also the other problem that they got a lot of refugees coming from different countries, war-torn areas, and those refugees actually cannot, they not only are some sort of cognitive challenges they face, but they are also cannot communicate. They don't have financial, they don't know how to stay in the American system. They have never been exposed to a banking environment, things like that. Right? So I think the language was a big barrier for them because they all work in a team in an assembly line setting, but language becomes a barrier. So you're sort of looking at that as an issue. But the real operations challenge of employing people with disabilities is managing variability. And who's good at managing variability? It is us. Operations is really, really good at understanding notions of variability and how that impacts operations. That's why we are needed, right? So, and if you want to look at disabilities, accommodations is a big part. So for example, if somebody has a challenge, they're going to say, I need some extra time to do something, or I need a break, things like that. You sort of need to manage at the task level how these things manifest and how some of these challenges impact productivity, right? So because on a daily basis, you go talk to these workers, the most first reaction of it is you don't need that. It's our policy. We are going to standardize, right? So that sort of maybe perhaps backfires and is counterproductive. Okay? So in our study, what we saw was.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So, this how allow those exceptions, means they all work on the profit model. So, is there some easy way to do this? Like something asking people to go green, but there, sometimes they get some benefits, right?
So that's a great question, Subodha. Actually, it turns out that in the US there are laws, even in India there are laws, right? So ADA is the law, Americans with Disabilities Act. So under ADA, every person is allowed individual reasonable accommodations, right? But what is reasonable is sort of a company's idea of what is reasonable, right? So and they can show it's very difficult to sometimes challenge them in the court. But what now many companies are doing is that they are starting to look at reasonable accommodations in more holistic ways, right? So that's why. So for a long time there was a myth that the cost for providing these accommodations is very high. We don't want to invest too much. But now people are starting to rethink what the cost of such accommodations are and how they are doing.
That's the one way.
In India also we have a law.
Right, that's right. Yes, sir.
Also studies are saying that people with disability have higher retention in the organization, where attrition is a problem from the cost point of view. People are retained more when they have disability because they have less job opportunities.
That's correct.
That is a perspective also. But the point is that how the inclusion of disabled workforce is in US is a problem. India, the government sector is the major employer of people with disability through legislative acts. But private sector is still hesitant to, or they are underpaid. That is also underrepresented.
That's correct. That's correct. And actually it's also true in the US. So for example, without going into detail, they had this entire program called shelter workshops, right? So now it's changing quite dramatically, but in shelter workshops, you could go to the federal government and get a certificate and pay them sub-minimum wages legally. Okay, so actually there's a lot of controversy about this, right? So in our paper we talk about some of these things also. But yeah, so now things are changing. Like they have in the state they talk about what is called competitive integrated employment programs, where the idea is that you can employ people with and without challenges side by side with no pay and privilege differences. But here is the problem, right? So it is easy to say, but really hard to do in a company, because if let's say you don't have challenges and you think you're more productive and you think why is that person getting special privileges that I am not? So a management still has to answer that. Either they have to design systems that bring people and make them more equitable in performance of the job, right? So that's where accommodations, etc. come into play. But even then, what is reasonable accommodation for one person may not be reasonable accommodation for another person. That's what makes this whole area really hard to study, right?
Even people with seizures have a specific parking place, but others think that they are given privilege of special parking in the organization.
That's right.
I have actually two questions.
Yeah.
One is how industry specific is this when you have manufacturing and services?
That's it.
And others in the data that you are showing. Is it an environment where people with disability also work with?
Yes, this is a competitive. So the area environment we are studying is fully competitive.
Okay.
So I'll show you more, right? But people with and without disabilities work together with no difference in pay. So this is what we are studying is the competitive.
So is it a common thing that in the services industry the opportunities are much more for them to have fair competition because?
So we can discuss that, but what I would say there is that it really depends, right? So you need to have not only a so this is the first one. This is a very specific apparent context environment, right? But the broader question that you're asking, Ganesh, is that I think there is a range of jobs and there is a range of skills. So it's about matching skills to jobs rather than disability versus employment. So in some cases, services is great. So for example, I'm actually talking to a call center that predominantly employs people with challenges. Now, if you have anxiety issues, just imagine a customer calling at you and yelling at you all the time. And I have anxiety issues, okay, so to be fair. Now, if I have excessive anxiety issues and I'm working in a call center where people, right? So it depends on how you set it up. So in this particular case, what we actually found was we simulated lines based on real time study data. So what you will find is that there is no the single disability condition. We created, lines with people with mental challenges, physical challenges, cognitive, short-term challenges. Individually, they were all lower, okay, with real-world time study data. But look at what happened collectively. When you start putting 2 and 2 together, collectively the productivity starts going up. And part of the idea is they get more allocation flexibility in maybe raising their level of the game if they're able to mix and match within a particular set of tasks. And that was sort of the intuition. And our results kind of replicated across different garments, right? So we thought this was kind of novel, that going back to the Henry Ford example, that you should be able to leverage allocation flexibility and employ folks. And we have anecdotal evidences that this could happen, right? So then we sort of said, okay, we use a multi-objective structure to see how sensitive the line is to increase disability diversity. What we found was that the line itself was not the productivity of the line was not very sensitive to disability diversity. What it was more sensitive to was languages, right? So communication barriers that come into play in sort of, but just to be clear, this apparel context was what we call as modular production setting. So if you have been to an apparel factory, there are 2 broad production methods they follow. One is called bundled system, the other is called apparel system. Like for example, if you go to a place like Tirupur, you're sort of trying to provide services from home, somebody will come and give you 100 garments and say, you know what, you need to, I'm going to pay you so much, you need to execute the stitch. That's a bundle production system. But these guys don't work like that. They are a lean plant with a single manufacturing cell, and tasks will just flow with limited inventory in between, right? So that's how they are structured, so it makes sense to sort of study what we are doing. So actually it turns out that we started with the simulation study that got accepted later, but then in the interim we started collecting data. So, it was a small company, they didn't have large ERP systems. Now it turns out they are going to install an ERP system. There's a good chance to get to work with live data, field data from the ERP systems as well. But what we did for later on was we went and collected more information. So we pulled information from about 300 different spreadsheets, and we said, okay, we want to sort of look at take a deep dive on data and try to understand how disability diversity based on data impacted the productivity of the lab. Yes? Short-term disabilities are drug addicts, for example, right? So opioid problems, and many of them, once you get addicted to opioid, you can't find a job. Then you really need somebody to help you come up to a certain stage before you are ready to find a real world job. Right? So that could be also. Yes, sir. Yeah. No, that's what I was saying. So this is a competent integrative employment setting where everybody is paid the same wages.
So would the promotion and all would be different?
That's based on skills. So at least in apparel lines, wages were based on skill levels. So if you are higher skilled, you will be paid more, and skill levels are based on how you could stitch. Right? It's the kind of stitch that you can make. And so
is it different from the non-disabled person and disabled person?
No. Actually, it turned out that we had to learn. So they put me through a sewing training program. So they said you can study our workers if you don't go through our sewing training. So I had to go through their sewing 101. So I have some pictures if somebody wants to see. I mean, doing sewing 101 in a factory. But anyway, so what we did was we went and collected all this data. We had more than 16,000 workdays of data, and we sort of pulled all of the HR timestamps, and we created a database of. They used to have cost sheets, and they mapped lines to wages that are paid to workers. So we pulled all their wage data, and then we recreated the lines actually. Several lines, more than 16,000 workdays of lines. And we now have 2 different papers from them. One of them got published in Exxon, and of course Peckham Foundation funded the study. So what we actually showed was empirically that if you employ more disability categories in a line, actually productivity gets better. But at extreme levels, productivity suffers because then you don't have that level of allocation flexibility, right? So it turns out that what we also showed that if you have an even spread of the nature of disabilities that you're employing, the line does better. And partly because even in the HR space, they talk about affinity groups for disabilities. If you want to support each other, things like that. So he said that actually works well in a task-related setting. So that was sort of what we found, right? But this was done with large-scale data. So we have another paper right now with my PhD student, where we are actually looking at what happens when the supervisor has a challenge. So you have team members who have challenges, but if supervisor has a disability, what happens to the productivity of the team? What we find is really, really interesting. So for example, we basically look at the nature of how many people in the work group have disabilities and its productivity impact, and what happens when the leader has disability or not. And so what we actually find with the same structure is that as you increase the number of workers with disabilities, a leader with a disability increases group productivity. If you think about typical span of control, you add people to the group, you have more worries about managing them. But it turns out that if you put a supervisor who has a challenge, they can better manage them. That's what we are saying, right? So, yes, sir. I'll share that because that's exactly what we wanted to. We wanted to know that, right? So we wanted to know why. Why do they do that? So we sort of spent a lot of time looking at that, and it turns out it's not just productivity, right? So it's also quality. So initially they are not so good, but as the numbers increase, you start seeing their value. Okay. So what we did was we wanted to know exactly the question that you were asking. Then why was this happening? So we went to 3 different organizations we were working with. One of them was Peckham, the other one was Goodwill. So if you have anyone heard of Goodwill, it's a very large company based out of Florida. And then we also talked to Walgreens. I can tell you they are the commercial enterprise in Connecticut. And so what we found was quite interesting, right? So one is that people with challenges prefer stability, right? But guess what do operations people teach in their classes? What is good? Cross-training. Right? But it turns out it does not work very well for them. That's what we found out in our qualitative study. Reasonable stability to the extent that a person can actually tolerate, right? So, and then what we saw was that people with disabilities actually empathize with others' challenges. They don't shoot them away or things like that. So those kind of ideas actually help out when they are working on the line because they are more empathetic. And it turns out that they also have preference to stay in positions. One guy we talked to basically said that they moved my building on the same task, but he could not handle movement of the building. He sort of suffered from anxiety problems that he could not take a change in the location, right? So what essentially came out was that if you have workers with challenges, you need to think through how you are placing them. Don't just blindly cross-train because some people are telling us, hey, we just cross-train because if we cross-train, they can be put on more lines, we can use them better later, but it turns out that if you have a reasonable set of tasks that you can accomplish, perhaps you don't have to cross-train. To me, that's sort of quite counterintuitive to think about, right? So, questions? Yes?
Can we categorize them as disability? So is this also inclusive both
Yes, both physical and actually because of our results from that go through whether it's physical or cognitive both. Yes.
Can you go back to that graph? When we are showing
yes,
this one. How these two graphs are different?
So one of them is productivity, the second one is quality. So it turns out that not only productivity goes up, but quality also goes up. That's what we are showing. Right, so actually, originally we had only productivity in the paper, the referees came back and they wanted quality and they added that data here.
Is true for all who had disability or very
No, this is true for
all the work.
both physical and cognitive. Yeah. We had 2 classes. We did 2 classes. No, this is we only use 2 classes. Okay. We don't have that level of data. So because they only had limited number of supervisors who had this.
Sir, how did you get this cognitive disability?
So they told us we can't measure that because we don't have access to individual private information. That's against the law. So they told us they gave us the codes.
So that when we are talking about the cognitive disability, is it something so simplistic like anxiety issues, or maybe more complicated like it could like a schizophrenia patient?
It could range
on the scale of.
It could range. So we don't know. So this is
they just told you that they had cognitive disability.
Yeah.
Was it a categorical or?
What we model is a categorical. Yes.
Yes or no? Binary.
Yes. Binary. But we don't know, see, part of the reason why we cannot know is it violates HIPAA. So they have to tell us what the challenge, we don't even know the name of the person or identity, right? So they will give us some sort of identifier, you cannot track it back, and then they will make sure that they don't tell us private information about the individual because that's against the law. So we can't do anything that's against the law. So we can only take data that, is usable.
Isn't it that kind of data which is very likely to be, misrepresented? Why do you think that? Because somebody might not be knowingly sharing about his or her.
That is correct. That is why they will give it to us. That is why they have to put it in such a way that we cannot track it back to a particular individual, but still make it useful enough for research. Does that make sense? Yes, sir. Please, yeah.
See, what the nature of the disability having a bearing on the efficiency with which I can perform the task. Because the disability can be one thing, but it may not impact my way of doing the task. So in which case, productivity or quality may not suffer. So were you able to think of it?
So that is a great point you are making, right? So ultimately, it ultimately comes down to productivity and task, right? So you are correct about that. So for example, what they told us was that if there are a lot of people with anxiety issues or learning issues who are really good at repetitive tasks. Okay, so you put them on things like sewing, they do extremely well. It's not like they actually do better than normal people because they get bored, right? These people actually enjoy their job. Right? So different in thinking about it. So, absolutely. Yeah. So what he also then did was, like I was talking about ROIs, he wanted to study this in a consumer setting. How do consumers respond to people with challenges? And they've been running a bunch of experiments. There are two issues we are interested in. Yes, sir.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we're not generalizing the result, right?
No.
It's not. So is there any kind of a type of skills, where it's appropriate or but is there any kind of a categorization that way?
That's such a great question. Will you hold on to it for a few minutes? I will show you what we are trying to do.
Okay.
But actually, there is no such categorization at this point. I know some people have developed, but they are not very. They are categorization based on just empirical ideas. This has happened before. But no scientifically validated categorization. Actually, it's very difficult to develop. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we are trying to do, right? Or at least attempting to do. Yes, sir.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, how these people were recruited. Let's say if the recruitment itself, they were tested for the skills for which they are supposed to be working, and they were fine with that, and that's how they got it. Then probably the disability probably do not have any role, because anyways during the recruitment process itself, it was found that the disability isn't coming in between in terms of their performance. And the second question is, you talked about the various combinations you need, various types of disabled people, combined together on the performance basis. The question is, can we also look at inclusive rather than only looking at various combinations of disabled people? Let's say few disabled type of people with non-disabled people and how then the performance.
So our data is inclusive. We don't develop an index or anything like that, right? But something to think of. Thank you for that. The first question of yours was selection and recruitment. Actually, it turns out that just because you select, they don't perform the job. So the setting that we are in is actually vocational rehabilitation. So these are people who could not hold on to their job ever, right? So there are people who have to try out a few times before they fail. But it is possible, we have to acknowledge that it is possible that some of them actually failed in sewing jobs. So what we are picking up are people who actually were a part of the sewing job, right? So in some ways you are correct. But one of the things that came out of our research, which actually Pekka was trying to pursue, is that they are trying to push many of the vocational rehab programs in the US to actually diversify the range of people they are serving. Because what they are saying is that in some ways, if you diversify as a policy the range of people you are serving, you then have to add more tasks into your business environment. And there are things that you could do with regulatory infrastructure, etc., on looking at some of this, right? So we can come back to that. Yes, sir.
So, first question is that physical disability, constitutes a category?
Yes.
So, my question is, when you are defining physical disability, so each point is a problem. I have problem in it. But what are the one trying to do that is not related to me?
That's right. So in many cases, it could just be even related to your half blood, your legally blood, right? Yeah, so it could be possible. We don't know. So that's what I'm saying, that you cannot go at the level of an individual and say what's happening, and then we try to get to it in a different way. Yeah, and I'll come back to that. So how much time do I have? 5 minutes? How much time do I have? 10 minutes. Okay. All right. Thank you. So for this study, we have been collaborating with an organization in Houston that employs people with the autism spectrum. So what we have been doing is we have been running experiments with their products. Okay. And we've done several studies. Okay. I'm going to briefly summarize some of the results. So there are two key different variables for us. One is willingness to pay and customer engagement. Okay. So we did a number of different ones. We look at basic willingness to pay, customer engagement. Then we are looking at incentives. If you give consumers incentives, is that different or not? Then we look at behavioral mechanisms. Why do consumers say this? Because typically customers don't see production operations. So we want to see whether perceived production complexity when people with disabilities are employed impacts their willingness to pay or customer engagement. Right? And then we wanted to generalize it to for-profit organization, because nowadays many companies are promoting that we have disability hiring programs, right? So we want to say whether a non-profit setting transfers to for-profit settings, and then we showed them videos, and I'll show you one of the videos here. Hopefully they're speaker, but we showed them videos and showed them how the product is being made and whether that impacts consumer willingness to pay. Actually, this study is under revision in Amazon. So let me show you the video. Hopefully this will work.
Autism is the fastest growing developmental disability, affecting 1 in 6 children. For many autistic individuals, it's not lack of ability, but lack of training and support that limits their future. When school ends, families suffer because of limited options, resulting in underemployment and unfulfilled lives. Social Motion's Aspire Accessories program creates a void-filling, transition-age program where autistics participate in a micro-enterprise, learning, designing, creating, producing, and selling handmade and assembled products locally and web-wide. Purchases provide purpose to the Aspire artisans as they earn their paycheck, learn personal management and business skills that transform their lives and transfer to the community.
So we will show this video and see whether video was even necessary or not, right? I'm just going to cut to the chase, and we did a number of different studies, So what we found was that disability treatment, of course, results in higher willingness to pay, okay? And it turns out that more religious people are even more likely to pay more, right? Because what's really interesting is that also a consumer's innate propensity comes into play too. And then production complexity is a really important factor. Why do they pay more? Because they think that production is more complex. So they say that this deserves extra money, right? But they don't engage more because production is more complex. They engage more because they want to support a social cause. Right? What's really interesting is you sort of separate out why somebody pays more versus why somebody engages more, at least now. Right? And then what we find is that they don't care whether you're a for-profit or a non-profit. They don't care, okay, at least in our experiments. The results turn out to be the same. And they don't pay you higher just because you say it's CSR. Okay, so you have to tell them what's happening. Which we think is pretty interesting from its own vantage point, because many companies I have talked to, they say, we don't know how we can market it to our consumers. So that's where sort of this is. And what's really interesting is that there is no impact of showing the video. So they will pay higher no matter what. If you tell them, they trust that you're doing the right thing. Which is also pretty interesting for us, right? So, any questions? Yes, sir.
No. If you show them a product and then reveal that this is made by a person with disability, and the same product if you don't reveal, is there a difference in willingness to pay?
That's what I'm saying. There is a higher willingness to pay if you reveal that the product is made by people with disabilities.
Okay, but if this, I mean, if the product, if it is not made by them, but if it's made by a normal person, but you say it is made by them, they still, that effect is there.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, so I'm asking this question because the data comes from textile industry. In my understanding,
No, this data doesn't come from textile. This is trinkets, like regular production. Like, keychains, posters, all sorts of gift products that you make. This is not textile. It's a different company.
because
Yes.
in the textile industry, there is no general concern for consumers that are the employees being treated fairly, right? When it is being outsourced to developing countries. So will something like this, right?
Tell you my everyone? Because this is the question that everyone asks,
So
right?
my question is, can there be any spillover effect? Like if I advertise that I engage people with disability in my production line, can that spill over and alleviate some of the concerns that the other normal workers are also being treated fairly?
Oh, so the question that reviewers asked us was, do customers think that you're exploiting these workers? Right? So what we did was so the answer is no. Customers don't think that. We have done a number of we did a number of validation checks to see whether customers thought that workers were being exploited. They were not, right? So actually they thought that the company was doing a great service to the people by employing them, giving them full-time employment.
So it is that altruism motive only?
Yes, it's altruism motive. You can see that there is a very strong altruism motive. Yes, sir.
It's specific to only the autism people?
So this one, that's a great question because we also check physical disabilities and cognitive, right? And there is no difference, so they don't care, right? So what we did was, then I published a managerial paper out of this, a practice paper. Yes, sir.
But do you think that this may lead to, in the future, the gaming people? What stops companies from
greenwashing kind of
auditing? So CSR audits are very common. If you are employing people, nobody is going to stop. You cannot completely eliminate unethical behavior. But most of these large companies are fairly okay. So
if you are going to your customer and saying it was made by a person with disability, you have to.
Yes, you have to do that. You have to come. Correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just a business researcher, that's what I'm going to put it.
Yeah.
Just like what Subodha was saying, we work on cross-disciplinary topics. So we wrote this.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do organizations employ these people with disabilities for the altruistic intention, or because by stating that these products are done by people, they get higher profits?
That's a great question. So the way I approach it is that there should be no altruistic intention because it is not sustainable. So that is why we need to do research because we want to tell companies how to do this right. So we remove the altruism structure out of it because ultimately we live in a capitalistic society. Okay, so altruism only goes certain length. Okay, so even for our own kids we can't do altruism. We come back and tell them, what are you going to bring? Otherwise, just leave the table. Don't annoy me, right? So that's not altruistic motive. So you have to create systems that are more sustainable and work in a balanced way, work over the long run. And that's sort of a big part of our agenda. Right?
But the customers are buying because paying more for altruism.
That's correct.
So how far can that go then?
Well, so the real point is that collectively we have to think about this as a society, right? So when companies employ these people for altruistic motives, they also have to create good production systems. Otherwise, they are going to be putting more money purely on, creating an expensive product that they are. So what we don't do, I'll also say that, is that there is no clear comparison between how much extra you invest in making the product versus how much more the customer is willing to pay, right? That we don't do. So it could be that is where the real essence lies, right? But we are just starting to. The way we look at it is that we are starting to scratch the surface and seeing, okay, what more can you do, and then start peeling the layers of this onion, right, if you think about it that way.
My only worry is that if a lot of companies come and say that we are making product with people with disability, will that altruism start wearing out in consumers' mind?
Well, actually, I think that will be a good thing, Subodha. You know why? It turns out that in the US alone, the number of people with disability-related challenges are more than 12%. They are half as employed, Okay, they don't participate in labor market much. Even if they participate, their unemployment rates are higher, okay, and their underemployment rates are higher. So the way you look at it is that if more people participate in the labor force, you are not only creating social good, but you're also putting less burden on the taxpayer, because these are the people who actually get paychecks from the
The
government.
problem is that if consumers start paying less and less, then they will start moving them out of the companies, right?
That's a good thing, right? Because then they would have, by then they would have figured out how to use them. That's how we look at it. But right now we are not at that point yet, right? So so we wrote this paper called, yes.
So my doubt is that if you are taking a company, then all people must be disabled or some are disabled?
Some are disabled and
but
some
sir,
are
the thing is, I read an article that say that normal people want environment to be happy environment and people to be enjoyable, like energetic. But disabled people are less energetic. So a normal person don't want to.
Actually, that's not true. Somebody will contest you that disabled.
No, I read some article
Yeah,
that people don't people want to work with more beautiful people than ugly people. Want to work with more energetic people, something like that. So sir, how can if you manage that?
Well, that answer is very difficult to give. I want to work with anybody. I don't look at
No,
it as
sir.
a-
I also want to, but I was reading an article like if disabled person and normal person are friends, disabled person can't go to party easily. So the
That depends on what the nature of disability is.
yes, sir. So how the field will choose that?
I don't have a good answer to that, to be frank. Like I think I cannot answer you specifically from my research because it's not something that I have studied. Right?
I think it can be a very good research question.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, from the perspective of the other employees.
That's correct. I think perhaps that's something that you can consider studying if you are interested, right? Because you can start looking at how these people perceive and whether you can design strategies.
Yeah, and sir, the thing is, in this both things are affected. Like if they want disabled person, they will treat differently, then the company's reputation will decrease.
That's
It's a
right.
matter of reputation. And if they will work together, then the non-disabled person's working power will decrease, like something like that. So how to manage that?
One thing can happen. One thing I think can happen, depending on the setting. Sometimes non-disabled people will be willing more to work with the disabled. In some cases, they will not. I think it depends on what kind of work they are doing. It will be very interesting, and I think that differentiation will happen. Sometimes I will feel happier if I am working with more disabled people. Actually, it will give me more pleasure doing that, right? That can also happen.
So if
I
you
see
can
your
look
point.
at-
It can be
No, but
possible.
if you can look at conditions under which those happen, that becomes a very valuable research question.
No, but I think the point you earlier made about higher productivity and incentive alignment, if you combine that with this, you can create situations where the non-disabled would love to work.
That's exactly right. That's what we want to do, right? Absolutely. So just quickly, I want to maybe 5 more minutes. I'm done. Time's over, right? So we wrote this paper called Abilities First. So the idea was we put a conceptual framework around the work that we are doing in a managing that how can we design processes that are abilities first. To your point, people don't like disabilities as a word. So we also didn't like disabilities as a word. So this paper actually got very good reviews because we set up a bunch of practitioners. So we were looking at giving you a prescriptive approach to how to do this, right? So and then it turned out that SCMR, where we published this, invited us to do a specific podcast on our issue. They liked it so much because they got good practice feedback. And now what I've started doing is I do my own podcast. Okay? I call it Abilities, Opportunities, and Future of Work. And what I do is in my podcast, I invite companies and employ people to challenges. Because like many of you have all these questions. I am not from this space, so I have to know. I probably don't know more than I know, okay? So just to be clear. So I sort of started inviting people to participate in our podcast. We've produced about 10 episodes so far. And then even were recognized by a group in Virginia that loved our idea. So they even featured us. So we are cross-listed now with other folks. And then, the Michigan Department of Labor even liked the idea so much that they gave us an award for They call it disability champion, things like that. But that's besides the point. We don't do it for this. Then we now we are working on a grant project on the same thing. We just got about 500,000 from Michigan MSU Foundation. And what we are doing is we are basically saying, traditionally you do this, right? You design a task and you force fit people into the job, right? So we are actually reworking this. Let's say, let's invert this. Let's actually try to look at the person's skill and then design the entire task around the skill, right? Can we actually do this? Is it practicable? So this is sort of our core grant. And what we are doing is we sort of have a very interdisciplinary, it's a multidisciplinary group, where we have people from vocational rehab, we have people from kinesiology, we have people from computer science, mechanical engineering, and of course business and operations, right? So nice to say that we sort of work with those kind of guys. So we have a team that's actually working on this. We even put together a conference because we wanted to share ideas, get ideas from other people. So we just have an NSF-sponsored conference on this area, right? So what we want to do is we want to promote companies to take an integrated perspective, not a human resources perspective, or not a marketing perspective, or a legal perspective, but let's talk collectively and see what we can do, right? Couple of quick things. We did this report in 2007 where we actually showed that if you want to employ women on corporate boards, you have to sort of scale them. That's the only way you'll benefit. And we showed ROE. This report has been cited quite a lot in popular press. In Google Scholar, it's got more than 10,000 citations actually. Right. So, but of course, in real world academic papers, this is not cited much. But it turns out that in UK, they passed the law called Fair Pay Act about 6 years ago, and ours was the only academic citation in that report, right? So, and we are actually working with Kurumbashree in Kerala, looking at micro enterprises and safety of women in these micro enterprises. It's a working paper, right? So I'm going to just show you the quick results. What we actually show is that this is with a couple of colleagues, Dermalia's colleagues, Disha and Sridevi, and they've been such a joy to work with. And so we are looking at livelihood of these micro enterprises falling sick. And what we are showing is that if women are in safer neighborhoods, these enterprises do much better. So it doesn't really matter whether you give them money, you give them, it's safety, the feeling of safety that dominates the survival chances of these micro enterprises. Quite interesting policy implications. I'm going to skip this. And we had a bunch of interviews, so for example, we went and talked to about 60 women because we want to talk to them, understand their lens. But what can operations do to design this, right? So I'm going to skip all this, I'm out of time. We've been doing some work on sustainability, water and carbon footprint. For example, with my doctoral student, we recently published water is a big crisis everywhere. All companies care about this. So, and this was in Subodha's special issue. We published our first paper on that. It's water stress, where we framed out opportunities for supply chain research. We pulled all data sets that other people are using all across the world. We put a structure on it and said, what is the role of supply chain in it, right? So we published that. So we have a really interesting behavioral experiment, at least I find it interesting, where we show that, buyers don't care about sustainability at all. It turns out that buyers only care about economics. However much you are saying the supplier is sustainable, they don't care. So we are sort of raising some questions about how should we communicate, what should we be doing in enterprise supply chain settings to make buyers more aware. Because if buyers don't do this, there's no way you can think about long-term sustainability impacts. We are actually working on a paper with a couple of colleagues in IIM Bangalore, Harita and Shubhankar, so this is the Delhi crop burning problem. So we have data on that. So we are actually showing that how interventions by CII Foundation, we collected data from over 180 village clusters. Last August we visited many places in Haryana and Punjab, and we are looking at how the nature of farming approach influences not only environmental outcomes, social outcomes, and economic outcomes. Right? So we actually find that they are improving and improving the adoption rate of sustainable agriculture practices in these settings. We recently started a new center based on much of this work we started doing. We call it Center for Ethical and Socially Responsible Leadership, because what I realized was that it's really important for us to educate students, make them good leaders, Because then our whole idea is principles of ethics, ideas of service learning, right? So something that Dr. Madhu was talking about earlier on. Yeah, and the whole idea is to sort of inspire our students to do something better, because we want to do good research, they want to use our research and go back to practice and make a difference, right? It's very long term. So I'm going to sort of, tell you more about this agenda, and that's all I have. Questions? Thoughts? Okay. Thank you. Yes.
So I was wondering, are you thinking about redefining the notion of ability versus disability? For example, you said that there should be help you get more productive, everything does. So in that sense, that person is actually more able, and the so-called normal person is disabled.
So what? So this is an ideal world. In an ideal world, there is no question of disability. There is only question of ability. But ability is defined specific to the task. If you throw me into a swimming pool, I will drown. It doesn't matter if you give me a 6-feet swimming pool or so I am disabled in a swimming pool. So the point is that how you can create a world where you are more thoughtful about understanding somebody's abilities in a task environment, right? But that's easier said than done, right? So that's what we're trying to do. That is correct, but I think the point Professor Subodha was making is in a consumer setting, right? So if you market yourself as altruistic, after some time you may not be able to market yourself.
These workers are actually more productive, right? So my very home must be essential
That's right.
And still be able to run the market.
See, that is an ideal world.
As long as altruism works, I'm still altruistic. That's not for me.
That's right. That's exactly. That's what we should be doing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like sir is saying that the productivity is important. But I could see in your those graphs, productivity was increasing per worker, per disabled worker, right? What if, so there we are measuring that if we start recruiting more disabled workers, our productivity is going to improve. What if it's a categorical thing? No worker, no disabled worker, all able workers versus disabled workers. So where will the productivity be?
It's difficult to say, right? It depends on the task environment. So in our paper that we wrote, we showed that no disabled group actually does pretty well. Okay? But all disabled does as well as no disabled under certain conditions. That's what we showed. Right?
So if there's a team, then composition of disabled workers and able workers versus all able workers, which team will be doing better?
So we showed that under certain configurations, both can do well. What the intuition is the most important thing. The intuition is that you need to think about allocation flexibility for the jobs that you're creating, because you're not looking at
then that argument of increased productivity.
Thank you so much, sir. Your presentation has been thought-provoking and informative. Thank you once again for sharing your insights. It's been a wonderful morning with all our esteemed speakers sharing their valuable thoughts and experiences. I hope you all had a great time so far. Now I would request Professor Raghunath Rudran to present our venerated guest, Professor Subodha Kumar, with a memento. I would also request Professor Amol Dhaigure to present Professor Sriram Narayanan with the memento as an expression of gratitude and the bond that we have forged with him. Thank you so much, sir. We will be now taking a group photograph shortly. We will resume the conference through technical tracks from 2 p.m. onwards. Please join us for a cultural show and networking dinner at 6:30 p.m. in G1 classroom, TMFI block. With this, we come to the end of our inaugural ceremony. And once again, we would like to thank our sponsors, Science Direct Elsewhere, Pearson Publication, Tata McGraw-Gill, and Education Supplies for their support. Now, please let us assemble for the group photograph. We would request everyone to please join us for the photograph near the dais. Kindly please assemble on the stage. I would request everyone to come on the stage, please.
Yeah, we have space, sir. कहाँ साइड में? हाँ तो लटको। इजी कर लो, लटकना पड़ेगा। अच्छा माइक होगा।
It is time for the lunch break and we have arranged for some delicious food for you all to enjoy. Lunch will be served at the basement block. Our team will be assisting and escorting you to the venue. And thank you once again to everyone for being there with us today. Thank you.